Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, March 8, 2022. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Karsbeck?
Here.
Trustee Stevens?
Here.
Trustee Harding?
Here.
Trustee Gray?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower?
Here.
Trustee Sorcelli?
Here.
And Trustee Hyman is not present.
All right. Okay, next on our agenda is citizen participation. This is a chance for the public to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Anything that is on tonight's agenda, you'll have a chance to speak other than the executive sessions here. And we have Jay Mendoza from REA. Welcome back. Last time you brought a check for us.
Oh,
That's right.
Yeah, you said some really nice things, so we like you.
I'm so happy you remember me. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Town Trustees. Again, my name is Jay Mendoza with Poudre Valley REA, headquartered at 7649 REA Parkway, Fort Collins, Colorado, 80528. I'm here tonight to share two things with you and the residents of Poudre Valley REA members. First, we have our annual meeting upcoming, scheduled for April 2nd. This will be a virtual annual meeting, and hopefully it's our last virtual annual meeting. We very much look forward to the days we can get together with our members and share what we are doing in person. Second, I'm here to announce some more exciting news. Poudre Valley REA's Board of Directors has recently approved another rate decrease, and it's our second in 2 years. The decreases amount to a cumulative 2.8% decline in average rates, which will result in overall savings to members of about $3.8 million per year. So while other costs are rising, our members are paying less for their electricity than they did in 2013. Yep. While our board provides a strategic focus on keeping rates affordable, staff and our leadership team work efficiently to make sure we are all doing our part to keep rates affordable. In addition, Poudre Valley is not only working to make electricity affordable, but we are also working hard to deliver reliable service. In 2021, we ended with our best year on record for our reliability measurements. So as you can see, our cooperative is committed to our members and excited for the future in this ever-changing industry. That's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you so much.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
When are you starting to serve birthday? Just kidding.
Is there anyone that would like to speak that did not have a
Poudre
chance to
Valley.
sign up?
Sorry.
You went online?
No, there's nobody online.
All right. Go ahead, ask the board if we could move up the town administrator executive session. Well, let me ask this first. We'll have a little bit of time here. I guess we have 30 minutes. My concern here is that our consultant for the town administrator annual review is here and would like to start at 7, but I guess we have 30 minutes here. Youth advisory, I don't know if you have a time frame on it. Do you guys think 30 minutes is enough?
Oh, yeah, that should
Okay.
be fine.
Is it all right with the board if we put the town administrator review after the youth advisory?
Second.
Attorney Smith, you wanted a motion, right?
Well, I think that you could ask for a motion to take the agenda out of order,
Okay, yeah, is it,
and motion to move
And
to
I already
second.
seconded it, so.
Trustee Grace, could you make that?
Yeah, I move to readjust the order of which the evening meetings is going to be held.
Perfect, thank you. And Trustee Stevens is seconded. Any discussion on that? Clerk, we have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Grace?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Hyman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower?
Yes.
Trustee Sorcelli?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Karsbeck?
Yes. All right, next on our agenda next is the consent agenda. Would trustees like anything removed from the consent agenda? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve?
I move to combine and approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, Trustee Stevens.
With the revised agenda.
With the agenda as amended.
With the agenda as amended.
All right, Trustee Stevens has moved. Mayor Pro Tem Dower has seconded. Any discussion on that? I guess Clerk, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower,
Yes.
Trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Trustee Sorcelli,
Yes.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Mayor Karsberg.
Yes. All right, next is the Youth Advisory Commission Summer Carnival request. Thank you guys for coming out tonight.
How do I get this presentation up here so I can see it? Okay, perfect. Okay, got it. Awesome. All right. My name is Grazia Novak. I'm the chair of the Youth Advisory Commission, and we're really excited to talk to you about our carnival proposal that we have, so that hopefully we can get our budget approved by you all. So, let's see. There we go. Thank you. So our feedback from our surveys that we put out last fall showed that many youth in Berthoud didn't go to town events because they felt that they weren't really geared towards them and were geared more towards either adults or younger children. So they didn't really feel like they had any events that were geared specifically towards them. So that's really what we are hoping to do with this event, is to have something that can focus on teens and young adults that they'll really want to go to.
So I know we did already propose this to you all, but just again, our proposal is to have a carnival type event for teens and young adults. We have a name, maybe, that will be the Summer Scorch Fest, kind of fun. We'll be using Airbound Interactive Activities as a vendor, and it will be at Wagner Farm Park, hopefully at the end of July. Okay, date and location. So we are currently working alongside the vendor to secure the dates of July 29th and 30th. The event will be held for 3 hours on Friday and 5 hours on Saturday. We chose 2 days so that everyone can come. So if someone drove by on Friday, they'd be like, oh, I want to come tomorrow, so they can. And the event will most likely be held in the gravel parking lot area of the Berthoud Rec Center.
Next, rides and activities. So basically we're working with a system where you purchase all of your tickets before you go in, and then every ride sort of has a couple of tickets or however many that you give to them, and then you can go back and buy more if you need. These are our top 5 rides that we want. The hamster ball with a track, the mobile ropes course, the mobile zip line, a rock wall, and the pedal cars with track. There will also be food trucks and a bunch of lawn games.
All right, I'm Daniel Hatton. To run this event, we're gonna need volunteers, and we're planning to get most of our volunteers from the high school if we can, but volunteers from other places will work as well. And these volunteers will manage lines, do crowd control, sell the tickets, collect the tickets at each ride. And any staff needed to actually operate the rides is provided by the vendor and incorporated into the cost already. So.
Awesome. So now the fun part, the budget. So you all should have a copy of the spreadsheet. And I'm not going to go too into detail on each specific item. Of course, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So the cost for the rides that you'd see right up there at the top is based on those 5 rides that we had shown earlier. And that cost includes power, the equipment that's needed to secure the rides, if any insurance that they need, and any of the staff that's needed to operate the ride. So it's pretty all-encompassing. We wouldn't really need to worry about having staff to run it or anything like that. The amount listed, $400 for the event permit, that's an estimation, and that would include any needed security personnel that we would have. We've been meeting with the Parks and Rec staff once a month to discuss the details and kind of get input on this, because we've never run an event of this caliber before. And they suggested that we have a budget allotment for music as well. So we allotted $1,500 for that, as well as include a first aid station, and we're hoping to have that included by the fire department. So if you would take a look at the budget, and if you have any specific questions for us.
I have one.
Yeah.
So as far as the 5 main rides, you can have other rides as well, and maybe is there gonna be gearing anything towards younger kids at all?
So everybody is welcome to come to the event, but we mainly wanted to our target audience to be teens. So that's why the rides that we chose are more like grown-up rides, I guess, or more like thrill rides rather than like a bouncy castle and things like that. And since it's our first year doing it, we didn't want to go too crazy big. So the 5 we thought would be kind of like a good base to start. And then we also wanted to have like lawn games and things like that around so people could come, hang out, go on the rides. But we mainly wanted to target it for teens. So that's why you see the rides that you do listed there.
Lawn darts, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, what is the volunteer incentive?
Yeah, so Trustee Mike Grace actually had this idea of providing like food vouchers for any volunteers that we have, since we will be having food trucks. So that $175 that we put there was based on like $4 or $5 per volunteer that we would have. And that would be enough to get like a snow cone or something like that, just to kind of thank them for being there so that we can hopefully get them to return for next year.
Additionally, to note, all high schoolers need a certain number of volunteer hours to graduate, so that's an incentive in itself for high schoolers.
Okay. And what is the cutoff day or year for young adult? Is it through high school?
Yeah, that was kind of what we were thinking. Like middle through high school was mainly what we wanted to target there. But anyone's welcome to come.
Not creepy if I join in on the ride.
No, not at all. Please come.
Get in touch with your inner 14-year-old.
It's not hard. That did bring up a
We'll
question.
have a race, a board pedal race.
Talking about the dump tank with the mayor, is
Yeah.
that still in the works?
That may or may not have been brought up by me.
I mean, it's definitely something we can consider. I think that we were kind of wanting to focus on the rides for now, but I like it.
The dump tank and Scorch Fest. I'll have a dump tank.
Oh, that would be
What was the vendor again?
It was Airbound Interactive. I think that was what it was called.
Oh, that's really cool.
I guess some more of the technical side. At that last meeting, you were talking about the different events and the different activities were gonna be there, and some of them you needed to figure out the square footage or the footprint and where that's gonna be located. I take it that's all fitting now, you've talked with the vendor and it's all.
Right, yeah. I was in contact with someone at the vendor, and then Amanda Gustafson as well. I included her on that as well. And we're hopefully going to have someone from the vendor come and look at this space at some point, just to make sure that everything's okay. But we already have the square footage and everything like that, and it sounds like it's going to work. But I think we wanted to have someone from the vendor come in and look at it just to make sure, and then see like kind of what layout would be best for that. So that's in the works.
Absolutely. Any idea about how many people you need for volunteers total, split between 2 days, about any figures on that, or is that still in progress?
We definitely did talk. We talked about that at our last meeting. I can't remember the exact amount that
I
we.
think we were thinking 2-hour shifts. The first day would be 3 hours, but we wanted to add 30 minutes on each end for setup and takedown. So total 4 hours, so 2 shifts, and then the next day would be 3 shifts. And we're thinking 1 volunteer per ride per shift, and then 2 at the front getting tickets, so total of 7 per shift. So like 35 volunteers would likely be enough.
Okay.
Your 175 divided by $4 would be about 45.
Yeah,
Food
yeah.
trucks.
They went for 5. They upped it to 5 just
five,
to
okay,
be,
all right.
yeah.
Just to be sure, to be generous, exactly.
You have any food trucks actually respond? Do you have them lined up, or is that still in the process as well?
We haven't talked to any yet, but that's definitely something that we're going to be working on soon. We just wanted to make sure everything was set as far as actually getting this idea off the ground first, and then we'd be in contact with them.
Can we comment yet? I mean,
Yeah, this is.
Please do.
I never get to comment, so.
This is not a public hearing, so go ahead.
Now you made me forget what I was gonna say. I think this is fantastic, and I have no idea if this is a decent budget or not, but I think this is a good starting point and a test model run, and I think you guys are just phenomenal. Can't even believe you stand in front of people and talk like you do.
Yeah.
I think you're doing great, so I hope this works out well for you.
Well,
for
thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
Trustee Hammond?
Yeah, so this is not a question for you guys, because I agree with what Lonnie just said, but as far as staff goes, having, organized events in the past at Fickle Park and other things, or you, Tim, with Snowfest, but does staff feel like this is an adequate budget from based on past events?
I think so. I think you could put on a nice event for this budget, $25,000. For context, we spent about 15 at 4th of July, and it's a reduced scope from what this is. But I think that would give enough to do something pretty solid.
Okay. So this is just a suggestion. So as somebody who does a lot of budgets as part of my company, I think you might want to have a contingency line item, because there's always something that will come up that you haven't thought of that you might need to. So you might want to give yourself like a, 15% cushion, 10% cushion, just in case something comes up or you need to run to Ace Hardware at the last minute for some duct tape or something. So anyway, so that might be a suggestion, would be to just give yourself a little padding there for stuff that might come up that you haven't thought of yet.
Great, that's a great suggestion, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Well, it doesn't think we need a formal motion, but it doesn't hurt to do it at the same time.
I wouldn't, I would actually ask that you do, just only because we're gonna add to the budget when we move forward, and so it'd just be nice for you guys to say, let's do it. We have a line item in the budget. If you remember when we did the budget last year, we knew this was something we wanted to do. We just didn't know what it was gonna cost at the time we did the budget. So we have a line item for Carnival under the recreational marijuana tax, which one of the few uses we can spend that on is youth activities and services. So this is a good spot to fund. And so if you guys are comfortable, I would actually suggest that you go ahead and budget 30. I think we have plenty of room to do that within that fund. And that'll give us some of that contingency that I think Trustee Hyman talked about. We don't have to spend it all, but it just be a good spot.
I'm excited.
So I guess the motion to board success would be to approve the Youth Advisory Commission Summer Carnival request up to $30,000.
So moved.
All right, is there a second? Second. All right, Trustee Hyman's moved, Trustee Grace has seconded. Any discussion on that?
I couldn't agree more with Lonnie. You guys, this is really impressive. If it's one thing that Bertha needs in the future, it's more events to bring people out, especially with our great new venue at Wagner. And I think this will be a great addition to our summer lineup.
And I'll just make the comment that you guys are rock stars. I don't know of any other youth organization that has put on an event of this magnitude, and you guys did it on your own. And I want the public to know this. Staff has been guiding these guys, but they have knocked it out of the park. They are organizing this all on their own. So to put on a $25,000, $30,000 event, as high school students with lots of other responsibilities is outstanding. So you guys are great.
Save themselves $1,500 if they're rock stars.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Clerk, do we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Sorcelli?
Yes.
Trustee Grace?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower?
Yes.
Trustee Hyman?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Mayor Kurzbach?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yay, thank you.
It's a lot easier to organize now that you have funding. So go for it.
All right, next on the agenda is the executive session. Would a board member like to move to take us into that?
It's your turn.
That's my turn, okay. I move to enter into executive session for discussion of a personal matter under CRS section 24-6-402. So just making sure I'm reading the right one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you are.
402, support 4F, for discussion of a personal matter and not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of the matter in open session, any member of this body, of any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of an elected official, or of personal policies that do not require the discussion of matters personal to particular employees. The following details are provided. Town Administrator Annual Evaluation.
Second.
All right, trustee Grace has moved on that, trustee Stevens has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
trustee Stevens,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Sorsali,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower,
Yes.
trustee Grace,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeed.
Yes. All right, folks, we're gonna head upstairs for this. All right, thank you, folks, for waiting on that. We're gonna bring the regular meeting back to order. Next on our agenda is the Town Park Concept Plan, and this will be introduced by our Deputy Town Administrator, Jeremy Olinger. I'm also gonna recuse myself from this and leave the meeting since I live across the street from this park, so. Mayor Pro Tem will be running this. Thank you very much.
Good evening, board. Tonight, again, we bring this back, we brought this earlier in January, at a previous. The answer. It feels like Wednesday, it's still Tuesday, so. So we brought this back, we brought this initially in January, January 11th, I believe. Well-received plan, design, working with LLC. Mr. Bob McDonald's here tonight, and his team at OLC. So they brought the initial one that you'll see up there, the general. There was some concern on the west side with some hardscape activities, some courts and things, namely pickleball. Some of our pickleball club membership and as well as a neighbor, and they voiced those input, and the direction from you all was to take it back, take the courts out, provide two options, working with the board and our design team and staff, and bring those two options back. What we did is we have those tonight, and Mr. McDonald's going to walk you through those options. What we also did in addition, we talked about the food trucks and the noise, and we were sensitive to that as well. Initially, we had some food trucks shown in our design along some houses and things like that in a row on the southeast side, and the northeast side. And so we've brought back some changes to that we think collectively works better. And then also, as well as when we're done walking through the two options and having a discussion, we've also, staff has also reached out, and we've done a design for pickleball courts and a cost estimator and a new location in Wagner. We'd like to show you and get some input from you as well. Okay, so Mr. Bob McDonald from OLC will walk you through those two options.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. All right, thanks for having me here tonight. This first slide here is just the overview of the park. Everything kind of right in the middle, where if you remember, there's a splash pad and playground and treehouse feature and thing right in the middle. That part has not changed. It's really that west side and the eastern kind of side with the food trucks is all that's changed. So I'm gonna quickly sort of zoom in on these, on the west side first. We'll start over there. So we've come up with two different options for this area. You know, again, we've removed the pickleball courts. Through the additional public outreach, there were some comments that, you know, we need active sports, something for youth to do, things like that. So we've kind of repositioned and recreated that sand volleyball concept up there in the northwest corner. So this would be a new sand volleyball court. It would have the proper sand that's you know, nice and it works with your feet, and you've got sleeves for actual nets, and we would put some you know, some lighting on that perhaps that, you know, is cut off lighting, so it just lights the court itself, you know, not get a lot of spill light or anything like that. And put some pavilions up there so to kind of support the sand volleyball feature as an active part of the park. We've enhanced the pavilion that you see right there in the circular area. The idea being that to have some kind of a pavilion that was available for rentals. And maybe there's two sides to it, so you could rent one half if you've got a small gathering, or you could rent the whole thing if you've got a bigger gathering. And then surrounding that on all the way around is really just open turf, so it's available for whatever kind of lawn games or activities that people want to do. Is sort of a more passive park. And then all the way down to the south in this option A is just more open turf area. So we're maintaining all of the existing trees in this concept, and so there'll be nice shaded and open turf area that would replace these really underused existing sand volleyball courts. So option B shows a little bit of a different direction. It's more of a passive and quiet kind of approach to this corner of the park. You'll notice in the northern part, we're showing a kind of a community area with some possibilities for gardens and raised planters. One idea we had was for more of a flower type garden, not so much vegetables that need a lot of maintenance and water and upkeep and weeding and stuff, but maybe that's more of a rose garden. People could donate rose bushes and things like that. Potentially you could put in a labyrinth or some sort of, sculpture kind of a area. An idea we had was to have a crusher fines path that kind of starts over by the parking lot there and then works all the way around this area. And it could be used as an exercise path and walking, jogging, playing with the dog, that kind of thing. And we could position the memorial stones and monuments that are out there. We could position those along the path as well and have placards and things like that. So we feel like that could be a really well-used amenity, for all ages, really. And then still, we've got the rentable pavilion here, surrounded by lots of open turf and just flexible passive park uses. And then we've maintained that sand volleyball feature, but rebuilt it pretty much in that same location down there on the south side. So that would be that same or similar enhanced sand volleyball feature on the south of that. So any questions about, option A and B for the west side of the park? Yeah.
One question that came up at Port last week was the fire pit. Is that, just a true wood burning, bring your own firewood fire pit?
Typically those are gas fired fire pits, and they're on more of a timer type system. So the mechanics of it would be housed in the pavilion, and you can control the hours that it could come on, and then it's self-activated by patrons, and hit a button and it comes on, and there's emergency off and all that kind of stuff, so it's safe. They're very popular amenities in parks these days. Yeah.
So just to follow up, so there are other parks in nearby communities that have that feature?
Yeah.
And so the other thing that came up at Port last week is, unfortunately, it seems like we have a lot of vandalism in some of our parks, especially in like restrooms. But so have there been any vandalism or other issues with the fire pit like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, most of the, a newer amenity like this gets a lot of community support, and people really value that. And for some reason, they, that kind of bad element, if there's more, people that use the park and it's more popular, then it tends to kind of keep that element away. They don't want to be in front of other people and things, so.
Maybe this is a question for Jeremy, but it was surprising to me that there were not security cameras at Wagner Park as part of the construction. Do we have security cameras planned for this?
Yeah, I mean, we're not at that level of design quite yet, you know.
There's
but-
existing already, so there will
Mhm.
be.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Grace.
I guess just a couple of ones. For option B, I like the various trails that kind of go around there, and those hook up to the sidewalk that's currently existing or will exist and hook into the rest, so it's
Yeah.
not just a trail to nothing.
Right,
Okay.
right, yeah, no, it's interconnected and actually connects to the trail that continues to the south along the
Perfect.
green path.
Are there any plans for any kind of, I guess, pedestrian benches anywhere on that, on the west side, on those trails, or is it just around the fire pit?
Yeah, no, there would be, we've got benches that are planned in kind of this promenade along here as well. And there'll be opportunities to have seating around that pathway as well as around the whole splash pad and things like that. So there'll be a lot of different, a variety of seating options through the whole park.
That's all I had. Thank you.
And so, real quickly, this next slide is, again, zooming in on that eastern half of the park. And just wanted to describe quickly what we've changed about the food truck area. One thing we showed some up here along this kind of the north edge.
You can't see your cursor.
Oh, you can't see it, okay. So where it says landscape buffer, kind of up there in the upper left-hand corner, we used to show food truck parking there very close to the residences, and there was a comment about that, and we agreed that that's probably not a good thing with the generator noise and things like that. So we had also located it down to the south along close to the elementary school, to Ivy, and felt like maybe there wasn't very good synergy between those food trucks and how you would use them to plan an event or birthday days or something like that. So we've sort of consolidated the food truck area in the center of the park and eased access. So you can see where Bimsum Avenue comes in, right, kind of in the center of the park, and we've got that semicircular area there. There'd be removable bollards, so that food trucks could pull in for an event and get set up on both sides there, and we could have some light poles, and we could string market lights between them and really create this central kind of atmosphere or a food court almost, where they you come in and you get your food there, and then you kind of disperse out to the various areas of the park. Again, also tied into the picnic tables and shade and that kind of thing. And then the food trucks could very easily just continue on that pathway and then turn right where that word says promenade. There could be some removable bollards there too, so they could turn right and head right up the street on their way out. So really consolidating that area. They don't have to be food trucks either. We could do the same thing with tents and, if you're just doing a farmer's market or a craft fair or something like that, you could set up those kind of things in that same general area. Yeah.
What is the substrate of all of these apparent roads in here? What is the actual surface?
It would probably be a hardscape, like a concrete or something very durable like that, for the most part. And we would have score patterns and different colors and give it a design, so it just doesn't look like a sea of concrete.
Yeah, because right now it's all grass and with birthday days we utilize a whole bunch of that space.
Right.
So I don't know if birthday days would be moving elsewhere. So
I think the idea is that it would stay here at this park, and that Founder's Green is a really large area. It's larger than the grassy areas in your current softball, baseball fields. And then you've also got the meadow. That would be a large, open, grassy lawn as well. So there'll be plenty of just passive, open lawn space for multiple uses.
I actually just thought another one. speaking of food trucks, this might be a question for Jeremy as well. Are there any shore power lines that are expected to be placed down? Because as you were saying, those generators, sometimes a lot of noise, a lot of exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any plans to put in power lines that food trucks might be able to tap into? Or is that,
Yeah.
I don't remember if that was brought up or not.
Yeah, we plan to have power available at the park. Some of these pavilions will have power so that you could set up a small stage or, lighting or have a movie or something like that. And we could easily put in some pole boxes and underground kind of outlets and power for food trucks or whatever vendors you might have along that area.
So it is planned for
Yeah.
that general area?
Yeah, and then we'll have lighting and,
Okay.
of course, you can plug into light poles and things like that. So,
Okay.
yeah, yes.
I have a question regarding the hardscapes. Is there consideration for runoff, storm runoff in the area so that we have more absorption of the water back into the ground versus with the increase in the hardscapes overwhelming our storm sewers?
Right, yeah, so we'll design that to have, detention areas on the site and not generate a bunch of additional runoff that'll go onto the streets and, in the system that way. So, yeah, it can be designed that way.
And those kinds of things can be creatively incorporated into the landscaping, and especially in a site like this where you don't have a big space just to plop down a detention pond.
Right.
Creating bioswales and planters that are detention facilities and those kinds of things are what we need to do here as we get into the engineering piece. One thing I will mention, if I could real briefly, just a reminder, I know the board knows this already, but our intent is not to reconstruct the eastern side of this park, the one that we're looking at right here, right? We need the baseball fields that are there currently. A lot of the feedback we got in the survey was like, well, why are you getting rid of the baseball fields? We don't have any other baseball fields. You can't take these baseball fields out. And I think a lot of that, many of the comments alluded to the fact that we're not gonna have enough baseball fields if you do that. We wouldn't be reconstructing the eastern side of this park until such time as we had built Richardson, where we have a really incredible new baseball complex planned, with big baseball fields. And I mean, it will be substantial and exciting. We're not gonna take these fields out until we have that in place, because we just can't, for both our programs and for, families and kids that wanna play baseball. So the primary focus of phase 1 of Town Park will be west of the existing baseball fields.
Can you describe this, what I called last time was baseball memorial in this upper right-hand corner?
Mm-hmm.
What's the layout of that? And
Yeah, so the idea is just to, have it somewhat reminiscent of a baseball diamond, and, but it would be in hardscape, a plaza with a fountain or a sculpture in the center, like around where the pitcher's mound might be, and then have shade pavilions around where the base paths would be, and then having shade and trees and benches and things like that. It's sort of, and it's also creating kind of a link or a gateway to downtown, because that's the closest quarter to downtown, and would also have an opportunity for, some market lights, string lights, things like that sort of notify people that, hey, there's a park down here, come down and bring your lunch at lunchtime, or, bring the kids and walk around. And
my first thought on that was I would have preferred more green space, maybe a small wiffle ball or t-ball size usable baseball field. But I'm liking what I see, especially with this option B. It would almost be like bookends of some community center on both sides, area to sit and gather and just chat. So it's growing on me. But
okay,
thank you.
good. All right, if there aren't any more questions for me, I'll turn it back over to Jeremy.
So just before you start discussing, just to follow up with some port comments, we went to port again. was, and Jeff can help me, trustee Hyman can help fill me in. Well received again, mainly that they supported option B. They really liked the meandering trail addition, and B, the south side of the tennis court stays, because that's kind of where it's been. And they really liked that, and they thought it was a amenity that would be used in conjunction with the splash pad and things as they discussed and worked through this. There was a neighbor, Mr. Barkeen showed up again and voiced, I think this is, option B is a great compromise with that homeowner, so I feel like we've done our job in that of working with the surrounding homeowners that, came and had feedback, so I don't know if he necessarily agrees, but I think it's a great compromise of what they did in option B with noise levels and passive activities and things of that nature. So I just wanted to follow up with just that you understood that board had a discussion about it and we're showing it. So, and then I appreciate Administrator Kirk following up about the survey and the 90 or so responses and kind of feedback we got with the general park, and that was well received as well with what he said. So.
I do have another question, if I may.
Absolutely.
On the larger plan where we could see the whole thing, it appeared to show one of the large trees still existing in the plan. Are any of the other larger trees going to stay somewhere in the plan?
The intent is to keep all the trees. We haven't had the assessment done yet, so I can't for sure say that, but I think where you're coming from, the intent is to keep as many as, my intent, staff's intent is, Josh's intent, your intent probably, to keep as many as we can.
Okay.
Absolutely. But the assessment hasn't been done by Josh. He's aware of it. We just haven't gotten to that step yet.
Okay, so this plan kind of vaguely as it's designed right now, we could fit in, as many of those trees as are healthy enough to keep in that.
Yes, and they understand that as well, OSC and Mr. McDonald, so they're gonna work around that best we can as well.
And if you look close, and it's a little hard to tell in this diagram, but you can kind of see the tree canopy, and they've designed the improvements kind of around to fit within that existing tree setup. So they didn't draw out each individual tree.
Okay, got it.
But like when you see Treehouse Adventure Playground,
Yeah, that's.
we're expecting that all to be built within those existing big shade trees, right? And so while they didn't draw those trees into the design, they're working around those.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
And that's where they started, was that every tree would be there, so that, until it's not, so,
Well, you can't build a treehouse.
yeah.
It'd be kind of a lame Treehouse Adventure Playground without the trees. So it's
Put a bunch of pallets down or something.
just a house adventure.
Build the house and hope the trees grow up into it eventually.
We do cardboard boxes. and
Or fake
cardboard
trees like
trees.
a McDonald's or Disneyland.
Well, no, I think that's been a top priority for staff and the board for years, because, to build a major aquatics facility here, which, was, closing the pool was a sad event, especially since we don't have an outdoor pool to replace it with at the moment. But, to turn this into an aquatics facility, you would have had to cut down almost all the trees. So preserving the trees, I think, is something everybody agrees on. And I hadn't noticed that, Chris, but you're right. You can see the trees in the background.
And you can kind of see that those trees, that the improvements are designed kind of around that existing tree canopy. One other neat little tidbit, if I could just add in, Jeremy, the Mrs. Kyle's class, 5th grade class at Berthoud Elementary, reached out through the principal there, and they were looking for a project where they could engage the students in a way to kind of create some relevant solutions to a community challenge or community problem. And one of the things that came up as I was brainstorming with the principal was this park and the idea of this inclusive, accessible playground that's there adjacent to. So if you flip back to that other slide, Jeremy, if you would. That circle right in the center of the drawing is intended to be this inclusive ADA accessible playground right next to that Treehouse Adventure Playground. And so the class invited me in last week, we kind of talked about some constraints with what may or may not be, what might work there, what might not work there. And they actually did interviews with students at the school that are in some of the different learning programs. They talked to parents, they talked to nurses. They have all these really cool ideas that they're going to present back to us as staff in a couple of weeks. So it's just been kind of a really neat way to engage with the elementary school and get some of their ideas. And as we get further along into the specifics of what that playground will really look like, they had some really neat ideas I would have never imagined, and maybe our playground consultant would have had a lot of those same kind of ideas, but really cool stuff. Things like one of the suggestions one of the kids made was actually made by a parent who has a child that has a speech impairment and has a really difficult time expressing themselves. And they said, well, maybe if we had a map that the kids could kind of point to explain what they want to play on, maybe even with some letters that they can point to and things like that, it'd be a way for them to engage and participate. Anyway, just really cool ideas like that from fifth graders, which, who see the world in a very different way than I think we do as adults. So it's been really fun to get their feedback, and we'll obviously be the conduit to share that with the consulting team as we get it back. And just wanted to let you guys know that was going on. It was really cool.
I guess last one, this one just kind of jogged my memory. All the memorials and placards and landmarks in the park, is there currently a plan for what they're going to get moved to or how that's going to get addressed yet?
Yeah, for me, I mean, there is a plan. For me, I'm sensitive to that, so I don't know yet. I haven't done enough research to, I mean, the easy answer is yes, we can pick them up and move them, but I don't know if that's, I don't know the history of why they're sitting where they're at. So we need to dive down as we go through this process. The hope is they all just can be moved at some point as long as they stay in the park. But yes, there is a conceptual plan in B, to take, option B is to take those and they've kind of identified it, if agreeable. But yes, is to maybe do something in that area or these areas as they become passive and take those and put them in a more visible place or a more educational space, or so that people can, because right now if you walk through there, like Mayor Karspeck pointed out, there's several in there, and I think if a general person walked through there, they only see one or two, and there's actually 4 or 5 through there. So
Pick one up and find a treasure box there.
yeah, we'd have to check into that. Yep.
Exciting.
Absolutely.
The Library of Alexandria is hidden underneath Town Park. So.
Knew it.
National treasure. Yeah.
National treasure, sorry.
You need Nicolas Cage now.
That's right.
Do we have any other questions?
There was a lot of good ones, and they pretty much hit the ones I was on.
Are we gonna do
All right,
comment?
why don't we, yes, time for comments.
Do you want me to continue the second part that's tied into this first, or do you want,
No,
it's up to
please
you all.
keep going.
What's
Yeah.
the second part?
So the second, yeah, so initially, as you guys know, existing Town Park has a tennis court, longtime tennis court there, that was transferred into a pickleball court 3 or 4 years ago. Highly popular sport, became popular in Berthoud, developed a club that came down and they organized themselves and play a lot of pickleball in that court that we transferred. Taking that hardscape out, the second part of the direction was to find a different location, to put a cost estimate together and a design, and we've done that. The direction was at Wagner Farm Park to investigate that, to research that, and we've done that. So what staff has done working with Wank designers, and the reason we chose Wank is because they did the site plan for, they were the head leader landscape design for our project, our rec center and Wagner Farm project. So they knew the land, they knew the layout, they knew the kind of the background experience. So this first slide is just an orange box just to show you, to orientate you, where the location of this pickleball courts would go. Just south of the basketball court, the existing basketball court, just east of the sand gravel parking lot in that little box that was there. So what we've come up with is an 8-court design. 2 competitive courts, I believe, 4 or 5 recreational courts and an ADA. Wheelchair, I believe, is a accessible court. In that space, we also designed a maintenance shed of sorts that we had budgeted as well, that is needed to take care of the grounds and things. So we've done some hardscapes in here, some benches, lighting, designed a 6-court based on the topography, north-south orientation, space for play, space for balls to go outside of the play courts, fencing. We've kind of put this all together, and again, we had Port look at it. So this is the design that came back after a couple iterations of 6 courts, and we felt like this was the best layout, accomplished a lot of things that those pickleball folks had input on. A lot of from staff, a lot from Port Committee. This just incorporated almost like 98% of what the ask was. So they designed that. So the feedback, we took that to Port. There was pickleball folks there, club members there. They did have comments. Those comments are 1 through 9 on here in black. And the reason they're in black, the ones in black are ones that basically are in the design already that we agreed with as well. The ones in red are not in, that they have specific asks for, that we didn't take in consideration yet, but we can as we discuss through that. Again, four of their memberships showed up with residents. Basically, again, anytime you put in park amenity, restrooms come up, shade comes up, lighting comes up. I think we've addressed those. The restrooms are existing right to the north. If you look at our plan, the sidewalk goes straight to the park pavilion, right to the restroom. Shade's a challenge, right? So we'll work through that. We do have some tree plantings in there. When you plant trees for shade specifically, those take time, right? We're not gonna, if it's shade meaning from top down, there's no direction to do a bubble yet. We do have inside at the rec center, there's pickleball there. So shade has to be worked through what that exactly means. Does that mean in resting areas or when they're sitting or bleacher areas, that type of thing, which is favorable. Benches are planned. Drinking water exists right to the north. They can fill up their water bottles. We have that type of drinking fountain to the north, just where the restrooms are at. North-south facing, we agree. They're designed as such. They face north and south. Lighting is in the design. Timed lighting, obviously nothing after a certain amount of time. We can adjust that a certain time at night. But the reason for lighting is, Colorado has some mild winters, and 5, 6 o'clock it gets dark. It'd be nice and they do play, to go out and play at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night when it's warmer out, and then get more days in. That's great. Now, number 8, you'll see the diagram changes to a bunch of red down your left side. They requested that additional fencing and a walkway in between the courts. And so the balls wouldn't go from different courts, and they would have a walkway between the top and the bottom as they went to their playing areas or such. We don't disagree with that. We didn't account for this in the design and the cost estimate. It was just add more money to that. There is other locations that have that, and it looks fairly nice, but just a lot more fencing that needs to go into the project. And then also number 9, a gate would be nice on the inside to get their balls if they ever gone over. Seems reasonable. I will say these are 8-foot fence. I mean, a pickleball is plastic. If somebody's hitting it over in a game over 8 feet, if they have a problem going over to the field, I mean, that's probably not a playing issue, but it seems reasonable to add a gate on that side. So just wanted to let you guys know that. The cost estimate was in your packet. I put it up here. I know it's small, but it was in your packet, just kind of for itemized. It did come back around 6:30 for the current design, so we anticipate somewhere between 580 to 680, somewhere in there, for the design to come to fruition. And staff is not saying we need to build these. I'm just saying here's the research and the work we've done to get us here and what we need to do. If we take obviously we made the decision to take them out of Town Park. The last slide, as we work through this and we discuss this, is just to give you an idea, and I know it's probably tight, maybe it's not, but just I pin some areas where pickleball courts exist or potentially planned. Knievel and Richardson, they can be planned in those designs as we develop those properties into parkland. The rec center has 6 courts inside year-round. That takes some entry money to get in or a membership. We understand that. Wagner Farm Park is the current design I just showed you. They are planned at Trails at Creekview currently. Pioneer Park, and it's Pickle Farms is planned to have pickleball courts, probably no more than 2 at Pioneer, and Prairie Star as well. So I just wanted to give you an idea around town where pickleball currently is, as well as Town Park right now, but obviously that'll be moving out as we develop that. We change that over as you saw in your options.
We gotta have pickle at Fickle.
Hmm?
We gotta have pickle at Fickle.
Yeah, yeah.
Just has to just work.
Yeah, that's a tennis
Bruce
court that
probably
gets
had to put
played
out.
quite a bit, so yeah, well, that could be taped. That's where we started.
Yeah,
So,
that's where I used to see him first off, because that's how, probably had lights too, for him to play in the
Really?
evenings.
Jingle didn't stay in people's mind, I don't know.
So Jeremy, what's the timing on when there would be, is there a projection as to when Prairie Star, Pioneer Park, Trails at Creekview
I believe
might have courts? I mean, Richardson and Knievel are obviously, Knievel's way down the road, but,
So Richardson's, we're working on in parallel with this design. It's gonna take a little longer, obviously, because it's a bigger project, but it can be designed in there. We did design some hardscapes. It started with pickleball, but with the Wagner Farm, we don't want to duplicate amenities. So if the lien was to keep them in Wagner, we would probably suggest to remove them and maybe move to tennis or something else. Prairie Star is in there. There is pickleball courts, I believe. I'm almost certain they're in that neighborhood today.
They already exist on Prairie Star Drive.
how many are there too?
There's 2.
Trails at Creekview, you guys know the development just came through, I think, for finals, so they'll start moving, and I'd anticipate those will be in the next less than 2 years, maybe a year and a half. Pioneer Park is moving and grading as well. Pickle Farms is moving, and the hope is that they, I would say within the latter part of a full year, those will be probably done on the tail end of a year from now, if not sooner.
And Pioneer's only gonna have 2 as well, or
Pioneer
Park's gonna have 2?
Yeah, I haven't seen the final design come back, but I anticipate no more than 4, no less than 2. Because now I think about, Town Park has 4, and that seems fairly small. But I understand, final design and housing and noise and things, they'll be kind of close to as well. So I would say no more than 4, no less than 2 courts.
I need a little bit of education on pickleball courts in general. We've had a couple tennis courts converted over to pickleball courts. What happens if in 10 years from now, pickleball has decreased in popularity and we have empty pickleball courts hanging out? Just supposing, please don't get mad at me, pickleball people. Is there an opportunity to turn a couple of these back into tennis courts? Should tennis increase in popularity in the future?
There is, it's not going to be, it depends on if you look at the design on slide 5, if it's up on your screens so when we started this, we did design 5 with a tennis court. Now the orientation, the tennis court takes up quite a bit, maybe like 1.5 of what you're seeing when you look at a court and the surrounding. It just picture maybe another third. So we had to, not include like the 8th pickleball court. So it became a little wonky. We did design these to a little bit over and play area and stuff, to be able to, think about that. But what it would do, it wouldn't be perfect, and there would be some wasted space in this design to do that. But it is something we did ask. I don't know if we ever said, hey, what if? It seems to be you're right. I mean, tennis kind of went through, and now I feel like the pendulum tennis is slowly coming back a little bit. But yeah, it's a concern. But like I said, it's been growing for, I don't know, the past 8 or 10 years. But it would just require restriping. The area is definitely there. It'd just be restriping and pulling some fencing out if we agree to all the conditions. And I imagine there'd be some wasted space in there, because a tennis court would take up probably a full pickleball plus another third to do so.
Okay, just curious.
But you could do it in this design. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, for clarity, we're not asking you to approve pickleball courts at Wagner. We just wanted to show you what could go there and wanted to give you some context about what that might cost. As you recall, we've generally committed this space to the library, but I think the library recognizes that they're not moving forward with their new library project in the immediate future, and they know that we're not gonna hold that space at Wagner forever. So I don't know that that's an impediment, but this is something we'd bring to you as the design gets further along, if the board wanted to prioritize this ahead of other projects that we might have on the list. So this is more informational than anything. We're not asking you to make a decision about the appropriateness of the layout or whether or not we should build it tonight. But just since pickleball was a big conversation, the topic of the redesign of Town Park, I wanted to give you some context for what we could do at Wagner if you wanted to do that in the future.
Do we want an option, a lean to an option, or a preference to one of the Town Park options so we can keep moving?
Yeah, I think, and then on the Town Park side, we, if you preferred option B, especially on the phase 1 side, or over option A, we'd like to know that, or vice versa, just so that we can take that and kind of move into the next phase of design. Other than that,
B.
There we go.
I think from a staff standpoint, we prefer B.
Let's just take this off.
All right, so at this point, do we have any more questions for staff? And is there anything else that you guys would like to present before we move on?
I do not, but I interrupted you when you were gonna do public comments, so I just wanna remind you that you were gonna do that, if you were still gonna do that. I didn't wanna
All
overstep.
good. All right. So then at this time, I think we'll close questions and open it to public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this topic? Do we have anyone online?
There is none.
All right. With that, I'll close public comment.
To me.
Oh.
Just scratching his head. Oh.
All right.
I didn't understand, is the public comment on Town Park or in general?
It's on Town Park or Pickleball. If you would state your name and address.
I'm Herb Herget. I live 568 Canyonland Street on Berthoud, and I'm probably going to be the president of Berthoud Pickleball Club tomorrow night at our meeting. Anyway, thank you for Jeremy for putting this together, and attended the port committee, and they were very supportive of the plan, and hopefully you guys work to approve this. We greatly appreciate the red that was added to the chart, because if you ever played pickleball, you'd understand the interaction of the ball and people on the court, and multiple courts. So the one thing I wanted to say is, we have a concern on like the Prairie Star courts and the new developments. A lot of those are in a metro district or an HOA, and they're not open to all the general public. So we really appreciate what you're looking to do at Wagner Farm. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, please come forward.
I'm Bob Arkeen. I live at 707 Welch Avenue. In relation to the town park design, from a neighborhood standpoint, option B is the one that we feel is the most compatible with the existing residential out there. So I just wanted to pass my comments along to you on that. Really do appreciate town staff putting together an option for the pickleball at Wagner Farm. Really do feel that that is a great place for that type of use out there, given its location and sort of the intensity of use that is intended with the Wagner Farm complex. So I just wanted to pass that along. If you have any questions for me, I'll just end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience here? All right, and still no one online, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. All right, we'll close public comment and now we can have a discussion and direction to staff.
So let me just jump in and elaborate on Jeremy's, what the port committee came up with last week, which was they were unanimous as far as town park on option B, both because of the trails, but also because the volleyball is next to the playground. They thought that that was much more compatible than having the volleyball separate all by itself. And anyway, so the port committee was really strongly in favor of option B. And then as far as pickleball, there was also, a huge amount of support. Everybody agrees, I think that that's an ideal location for pickleball. I think the pickleball committee input was well received by Port in terms of adding the interior fences, which, you know, as a tennis player in high school, it's definitely very beneficial to have barriers that stop balls from rolling, you know, across 4 courts, and you have to stop play on all the other courts to get your ball back. And the central walkway, the pickleball participants pointed out that the gates on the original plan, you know, you'd have to enter and then walk across several courts to get to your court. So that central walkway there just makes a lot of sense, that you can walk down the center and enter any of the courts. And I've seen a lot of pickleball facilities where there's benches in that central area, so you can actually set your stuff down or go put on your shoes or whatever in that central area, so you're not actually in a court when you're doing that. I know that there was request for the gate on the east, which was also made a lot of sense with the central walkway. But I would, you know, this didn't come up at Port, but I mean, Keith Knoll, the Parks Director, Public Works Director, pointed out that there's a pretty big grade difference between the parking lot to the west and the pickleball courts. The pickleball courts are going to be several feet below the parking area because of the grade and the drainage, which, you know, obviously it's not, the design's not quite at that stage, but personally I think it'd be really beneficial if there could be steps on the west that lead to that central walkway so that it's, you know, easily accessible from the parking lot, but also anyway, and then the ADA entrance could be on the north or on the east. And then I also think it would be really important, just knowing how this original skate park over by the museum, you know, lacked shade for years, so the kids were just out there baking in the sun. I think it would be really beneficial to have, can you go back to the one that shows the picnic tables on the north side there? So that original entrance to the pickleball on the north side there's a couple of picnic tables. I think that would be ideal for a small shade structure so that there was a place to rest in between games or whatever, just a place to have some shade without walking up to the pavilion to the north. And then, what else? I think that's it. And then there was some discussion about having a wind barrier, putting some sort of a screen on the 8-foot fence around the courts. Personally, I don't know how much that would really shield from the wind if it's really that windy, but it might be nice for just screening. But anyway, that was the gist of Port, was option B for Town Park and strong support for the pickleball.
Any other comments?
Me.
Trustee Hardy.
If there is really a big grade on that west side, is there a way we could incorporate some sort of benching system in that grade instead of just having a rounded turf hill?
Yeah.
I've seen that at other ball fields where there's a big grade, they'll put in like block or railroad ties.
That help with wind too.
And make like since those are the competition courts on the west side.
So make it like a seating.
Be like a seating area so they can watch the competition courts, maybe.
Just, the only comment I would have is it'd be more likely that we would put something like that on the south side. It's hard to see on this drawing. There's a little dashed line that runs just immediately adjacent to the west side of the pickleball courts. That's the conservation easement boundary. And so I don't know if Colorado Open Lands would have issue with us putting bleachers or seating.
Not bleachers, there would be landscaping.
Sure. I think that
Tiers.
might work out well.
Landscaping
if it's-
tiers that could.
Terraced planting beds.
They are
That you tap it to sit
surprisingly
on.
picky about that kind of stuff. So that's just something we would have to
Yeah, no,
confirm.
I'm not asking for bleachers, those are ugly, but a nice landscape
Maybe some
feature that could
stone
double as a seating
steps.
benching area.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah.
Some letters on it so you
With cup
know.
holders.
Yeah.
Level A, level
With,
B.
with A2, A3.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I hear you. That's a good
And
suggestion.
then with the 4-foot path going down the middle center, east to west,
Go to the red line.
how does that affect this entrance on the north? Because it looks like everybody still go to the north, but they can't get to that middle sidewalk path. Is there gonna be a 4-foot path from the north and south too?
No, no, right now the gates are on the west. There wouldn't be a 4-foot path, because,
Right now, the gates are on the north.
Well, there is a gate on the west also, but
right, there's gates on the west too.
I just see this nice big welcoming path with tables and everything. They get there, go, oh, I can't get to my court on that southeast side.
Right, and so what,
Going back
because these
down
came
the road.
in late, with this path going east and west, we would
we'd
we would have
relay
to
out.
bump,
you
bump the
rework it.
courts down, but we can't go too much further. Because while there's grade on the challenges on the west side, there's also grade challenges on the,
Okay, is there a
Southeast
possibility to put like
corner.
a sidewalk around the perimeter? Is there a way to put a sidewalk around the perimeter, or would that be too expensive?
no, because on the southeast corner, the bottom south, the bottom right corner, we're within like 3 or 4 feet from that dropping a foot or two, which would require a retention wall all along that south side and up the east side, which then you get in retention walls and drainage. It's gonna increase this quite a bit.
So
That's why
what-
we
But
stuck
again, I
with this
think
design.
this is conceptually,
Right.
Yeah.
this is literally just Keith sketched out on a
Quick
drawing with a-
fixes and then I'll
Yeah,
come
yeah,
back
just to
different.
kind of give you an idea of what we were talking about. We'll have to do some redesign to
Yeah.
make all that work.
The fences in the central walkway just basically got suggested and added last
That's
week.
right.
So I think, so they were not here when the original layout was there, so I think you'll just have to rework that, but.
And also, just briefly, the fences that are north-south, that there are gaps in between that are, potentially maybe a little staggered. The fences apparently go all the way to the edge in the back. And if we wanted to allow people to walk, to the different courts, is it a bad idea to just back off those fences from that north end just a few feet so that people could walk behind the courts to the court that they need to get to?
Yeah, you certainly can go north. You can extend the courts or extend the fences north.
I think what Ryan's saying
I'm
is,
saying
instead of
that-
leaving just a gap in the middle, leave a gap at the north and south ends where it meets the other fence so that you can,
Right.
go get your ball or
Yeah.
get to the other courts on the north and south end, not just in the middle.
Right, and understanding that, I don't wanna complicate it, it is a design and conceptually, but also Wink did it knowing the topography and knowing, so if we go too far south, which is only like 4 or 5 feet, it becomes a 2 or 3 foot retaining wall.
Oh, no, I'm saying on the inside, the red lines.
I know what you're
Shorten them.
saying,
You know
and
what
I
I'm
think
saying?
the answer is
Shorten-
yes. I
shorten
think
the
it
red
makes sense
lines.
to leave
Okay.
some
Alright, cool.
some
Got it.
fencing there, a gap in that
Yes.
north-south fence on both the north and the south end, not expanding the courts, but leaving some.
Just
your
leaving a
ability to
little
walk
gap in the
between the two.
fences.
Shorten that red line.
Okay,
I have some comments. First of all, I want to sincerely thank staff for going to the public with the design. I think the public outreach on that was really effective. I saw it in multiple places, and I just wanted you guys to know I acknowledge that, and I thought that was you guys really listening and doing your due diligence to involve them, so thank you. And I appreciate that you feel like this is the right design moving forward with that public comment in mind, so thank you. And I think I also appreciate that you listened to the citizens that are gonna be impacted by this design, the residents close by, and I think the Design B is gonna be a great way to make them feel like this park also keeps them in mind, so I think that's great. And as far as the pickleball, I think moving forward with that makes perfect sense in that area with the recreation on Wagner. I think all of that seems really inclusive of everyone in the community that has come forward, so thank you.
Jeremy, just a couple things. Now, if the pickleball courts that are on the east side of Town Park or west side of Town Park now, would those have had to have been upgraded and redone with the original plan for Town Park, or were they just gonna be left where they were?
I
as they are now?
I would make the suggestion that we redo them because we converted a tennis court, which we don't have the proper outside court room and things like that. So, and it was kind of, as you know, orientated, slammed against kind of the shared property line. So I would suggest if we were to keep them, if we were going to, they would be redone
Okay, so
the right way.
So my point in trying to make is, what would that have cost relative to the cost of putting them in Wagner Park, so that the net cost of this project at Wagner would actually be less than $650,000?
It just would be at that point. Now, the design we have for Wagner tonight is kind of maximizing our area. In this area that we're showing 8 courts and obviously a competitive court, which is bigger and a bigger play area, and an ADA one. So we're showing, because we're maximizing that area. Maximizing the town park area wouldn't be courts of this magnitude, quite possibly, but it would determine, you guys would determine how much space you wanted to give to maximize, is what I'm saying. So it could be 4, could be 6, could be 8, and we would just work from that, so.
Okay, so the point I was trying to make, or what I'm seeing here underlined, is that 680, possibly at Wagner Park, really isn't that high or that much, because we're gonna save what we would have done in Town Park.
I see what you're saying.
So let's say 200,000 at Town Park, we can almost take that right off the top if we do it at Wagner, so it's really not as expensive a project.
In theory, yes, and probably in reality, because of the option that we've worked through, eliminates some of those hardscape, and that costs dollars, right? And the options they provided eliminates that hardscape, so yes, there would be some cost savings, in my opinion.
And I'm just trying to justify, not justify, but understand that, you know, if we go to Wagner Park with the pickleball, it's not as high a cost as one might look, see on paper.
I would agree with that, what you're saying.
Now, the cost of the pickleball at Wagner Park, is that going to push any other projects that we're looking at out significantly further?
I would defer.
I guess I don't know. The answer to that question is I don't know. Richardson Park, which would be the next big park we would build after this, is a a very expensive facility, probably 16.5 to $20 million.
So this is like a drop in the.
So, yeah, I mean, could we cut $700,000 out of that project? Yeah, but that would require eliminating some amenities there that would be planned. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't. So I guess the answer is it could.
I'm not suggesting, try to pay for this from another source. I know that there's a lot of things that, the budget, thanks to you, in at least partly, the budget's allowing us to do some of these projects. But I'm all for going forward on the pickleball. Don't get me wrong, I'm just trying to justify, are we pushing other things ahead of it? Because we got a group of, citizens that are advocating for this, which I agree, that's the process, so that's a good thing too. But I want to make sure that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul to an extent that it is going to concern any of our projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think we showed the pickleball courts and the cost estimate just for some context and flavor for you tonight, knowing that that was a component of the town park discussion. I think we still need to look into the specifics of both, how does this affect future projects? Honestly, I think you made a good point in that we would have probably spent a couple $100,000 to move and redo those pickleball courts at town park that we, in theory, won't spend. That doesn't mean that we won't spend other money in town park,
Make up for it.
to make up for it. But yeah, I guess the short answer is, I don't know that we have those answers tonight, but we're also not asking you to make that decision tonight. So when and if we bring this back to you for approval for pickleball courts, we'd certainly give you all that data.
Okay. And my comment is, nice job. I like B, and I don't know, I've never played pickleball, but I like the pickleball idea as well.
And I will say, we used the USA Pickleball Association's guidelines for court design and construction to kind of lay all this out. So I didn't know such a thing existed, but we just found it in a Google search and sent it to our landscape designers, and they was like, "Oh, this is great. We didn't know this existed either." So anyway.
So question for you along the lines of what Trustee Stevens said, and that is, so we're looking at financially, what is it potentially going to displace in the budget that you guys have already set for the year and looking into the future, but also staff time. Is this going to detract from the staff time that you have assigned to other projects?
Well, sure. I mean, it's always kind of a zero-sum game, right? We only have so much time to work on something. The use of consultants frees up a lot of time. It's a fairly simple design effort from our perspective, certainly in relation to something like Town Park or Richardson. It's a major design effort. It takes a lot more time than the pickleball courts. So it's probably something that we can absorb. I'm not too worried about it from a timing perspective.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure we weren't stressing the system and stressing,
We appreciate
staff.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Yes.
quick question of clarification. So we talked about this previously, so similar to not displacing the baseball fields till we have more baseball fields. We also talked about not displacing the current pickleball until we have more pickleball. So that's part of the plan. And then, I said this to some of the pickleball people after the port meeting, and it's similar to Lonnie's question is, our youth have been very, very deficient in baseball fields for many, many, many years, like pretty much the whole time that I've lived in Berthoud, the last 26 years. So I totally support the pickleball. The Wagner is absolutely the perfect location for it. And we'll end up with, in my opinion, we're gonna end up with twice as many courts there as we could ever imagine at Town Park. But anyway, I just would not support the funding if it was gonna delay baseball fields. But I think Lonnie may be right, which is Richardson is such a big project that spending $600,000 on pickleball in the short term might have significant benefits and not really delay the Richardson project, but I would definitely not support spending $600,000 on pickleball if it's gonna delay getting more baseball fields for kids.
And I will say, we're looking at Richardson Park in a phased approach also. And so I think at least conceptually where we're at right now with the design, there's the ability to build new baseball fields, new multi-purpose fields that also serve as baseball fields, an aquatics facility, a destination playground, all kind of as independent elements of each other. And so there is ways for us to phase that project in a meaningful way to get some of the high priority items we have without dumping the, $25 million or $30 million right off the bat and bringing that cost down to something we can manage. So I think what I'm alluding to is that I think the Richardson design as we have it today, conceptually anyway, would give us the ability to make some of those choices without having to give up some of those important amenities that we know we need.
So do the ball fields as phase one?
We could, yep, or we could do ball fields and outdoor aquatics as phase one, or, whatever, but yeah, our goal is ball fields and outdoor aquatics as phase one. We'd love to add the destination playground as part of phase one, but the way the site lays out, that might not be possible. But there's some other really cool amenities that we have in the plan for out there that could all come later.
Yep, and I support option B.
Can we have just a consensus here?
B.
B. All right, looks like option B, and how about the pickleball courts?
I'm with Jeff on that, yeah, as long as
Let it
we're
be.
not slowing down baseball.
As long as we're not slowing down baseball, I go for that too.
Great.
Anyone else? Okay.
We'll keep moving forward on that design and get it all refined, and we'll bring, like I said, we'll bring you back some more specifics about kind of what the future looks like, what the costs are, and what those impacts may or may not be.
What are we gonna do with all those without all those pickleball emails in our inbox?
I'm sure someone will fill up those email inboxes with something else.
There's no shortage of problems, Jeff.
That's the nature of what we do.
And I have one more comment, I gotta just, on May's, on what May was saying as far as listening to the public, and, I think staff did a beautiful job listening to concerned citizens and trying to find a middle ground, trying to make everybody happy and come up with something of this quality. I think deserves a pat on the back. Very nice job.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Appreciate your time. All right, so with that, we will move on. I'll bring Mayor Karsbeck back down here so we can.
All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. Number 4 agenda item is the Metro District Policy and Model Service Plan discussion. And just as an overview, we did not approve the Turion Metropolitan District, and the board decided to look into a Metro District policy. And that was made up of a team of 2 trustees, and that was Mayor Pro Tem Dower and Trustee Grace, and met with Administrator Kirk and Attorney Smith. And these are kind of the results from that discussion. And we'll just go over those and see what the trustees think. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
All right, thank you for that introduction. That does at least get us started here on this discussion tonight on Metropolitan District Model Service Plan. So just briefly to start, metropolitan districts, when they do come before us, they have to bring us a service plan for how they're going to, what they need to borrow, why they're going to borrow it, how much they're going to charge in taxes back to the future residents of that district, and their justification for how much they want to borrow and what they're going to use it for, either to service the debt or for operations and maintenance. So that is the background. There is a state statute called Title 32, Colorado Revised Statute, that gives very clear guidance on what metro districts can and cannot do and the limitations thereof. So what we are trying to do is develop model service plan that is for use for our town that does have additional items that we think are of concern and we would like to address so that future boards, everyone has the same playbook and we understand what's happening, and hopefully future boards will not have to go through the Metro District 101 presentation every 2 years. Hopefully we can keep this going a little bit more cohesively in the future. So also, please pardon my presentation, I am not a professional, so just saying. So we're gonna talk about Metro District basics, just a real brief overview, what the primary concerns were of the trustees that we have, collectively or individually mentioned. I already mentioned why we want to do a model service plan. And then we're going to go into the Berthoud Model Service Plan overview. And this is a service plan that is based on Fort Collins's Metropolitan District Service Plan, their model service plan. The reason that we went with it is upon review of their service plan, which was passed in May of 2021, they have addressed many of the issues that were of concern to us. In addition, looking at this and then potentially adopting it in the future eliminates a whole lot of work for the staff, hiring consultants, moving forward with discussion points, trying to find out what really our pain points are here in Berthoud. So those are the benefits of going with another community's model district or model service plan. So with that, we'll move along. Basically, we're gonna look over the policy for reviewing metro districts, and that gives the guidelines to staff and to the board. Then we will look at Exhibit D, which is multiple district service plan, which is what we have seen several times come through. There is also a single district service plan, which we will not be reviewing tonight. Then we will go over extraordinary benefits, which is the benefits that allowing a developer to come in and utilize the metro district ability to tax, so their ability for taxation and for borrowing. So we want to show what extraordinary benefits in exchange for their ability to tax the residents. And then we'll go with questions and discussions with the board. And I believe there is no public hearing tonight because this is just for an informational presentation. They're authorized by the Special District Act, and again, they are kind of like a semi-autonomous local government that works just in that district. They must provide 2 or more services that are detailed in Title 32, and they are then detailed in the service plan. The formation requires the local jurisdiction and court approval and an election by the eligible electors. And for you guys' information, there's a discussion about eligible electors on page 5 of our document. And there are, as of 2021, there are 1,794 active metro districts versus in 2005, there were less than 600 active metro districts. So did pictures here so everybody can just glance through instead of words. So a metro district must provide 2 of the following. So fire protection, but we already have fire protection for most of Berthoud, so that wouldn't apply. Generally, public safety, again, we have the contract with the Larimer County's Sheriff's Office for protection, so that would not be something that they would do. Most metro districts do not include television relay and translation, especially with cable providers in the area, other internet providers offering television and streaming. That's not realistic in today's day and time. The next thing that they could potentially provide, depending on their location, is water infrastructure, specifically water infrastructure that involves water mains and potentially expansion of water treatment plants, depending on the size of the metropolitan district and how many homes will be brought in. Another one is sanitation, which we do not have a town designated municipal sanitation organization, or rather provider. We do not have that. So we would not anticipate that a particular metro district would take over and create their own sanitation provider. Transportation, I put this on here. The Regional Transportation District, which does not apply to us, is a special district. It's not a metropolitan district. However, it functions in the same way. The people who live in the RTD area voted themselves to tax themselves to pay for regional transportation. In addition, they voted several times to increase their own taxation for their district in order to fund light rail. Other things include wastewater treatment, solids treatment, parks and recreation, street improvements, and mosquito control. We do have rules on hand in our municipality regarding mosquito control. So the bottom line here is that in our town, primarily, what we see in the metro districts that come before us is parks and recreation and street improvements. That's typically how they provide their two qualifications in order to qualify for a metro district. So then we ask, okay, so who can be an elector? We talked about RTD, and RTD had a large metropolitan area and suburbs that people were already living in. They were property owners who were also residents, and they are generally referred to as end users. In a metropolitan district that's for residential development, many times there are no residents there because it hasn't been developed yet. So the question is, how do they vote to create that metropolitan district? Who counts as an elector? So end user resident is one of them, and that might be one for, like, say, the fire district. People would vote on that, or RTD. The next is a person, the developer, their spouse, their civil civil partner that own taxable real estate or personal property within the district, but they do not have to live in the district. And this is in Title 32. So as a statutory town in the state of Colorado, we are not home rule. We are statutory. Because of that, this Title 32 section, we cannot change. We need to live by that. So they don't have to live on it. They just need to own taxable, real, or personal property, and they don't have to live there. Third one is a person who's obligated to pay taxes under contract to purchase a taxable property. So they may have a contract to buy a parcel. There's no minimum size specified. Well, there might be. Attorney Smith, is there a minimum size that you're aware of?
There is not a minimum size. There is some case law that has called into question some particularly small sizes, but no, there's not a minimum size, not in statute.
Okay. So basically, I just put in these, various options so that you can see at the top left, and bottom right are typically the people who are the electors when a metro district is first created. It is not typical for a residential metro district to have end users or residents as a majority or even in existence yet. So this is copied from it's copied from 2019, the Colorado Municipal League presentation on metro districts that was put on by lawyers from several municipalities actually right around us. So they had concerns, these town lawyers and the towns themselves. They got together and they talked about what bothered them. One was metro district transparency. So this is something that I didn't know. The meetings for the metro district electors can be held quite far outside of a district. Say for up here, it could be held in downtown Denver. For these municipalities, there was a limited remedy for failure to file an annual report. An annual notice to electors could be provided by posting to the special district association website versus, a town website versus a local newspaper versus sending notification by US mail. So those were interesting to me, and I think maybe interesting to the rest of the board. So this is a list. It's not comprehensive, but it was a few of the things that we discussed that were our concerns, among others. We were concerned about the homeowner awareness of mill levy, which we addressed a couple years ago with the addition of the disclosure form that must go with the transaction to buy the property. The other questions is subsequent buyers' awareness of the mill levy, if that document has to be presented prior to closing every single time, like when the property goes under contract. And that's something I need clarification on. Can you please refresh my memory as to whether that disclosure document, is it presented to the potential buyer at the time of contract?
I believe it is.
And is it also required to be in the following contract for subsequent purchasers of the property?
I believe it is.
Cool, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. There was also discussion about resistance to future tax increases proposed by the town, other special districts, and the school district. That was echoed by every single municipality that had their presentation at the 2019 Colorado Municipal League. Protection of residents from excessive developer cost shifting. The developers routinely asking for the maximum allowable mill levy. It just seems like we've never had a developer come to us and say, you know what, we really don't need to borrow to the full amount. We can stick with something less than that. We've never had that. Then the metro districts, this is a concern for Berthoud, not providing promised services. Snow plowing, that's a big one that we get complaints about with the town. Why isn't the town plowing our roads? Well, actually, it's not the town's responsibility. Many times, those other roads within the metro districts are the responsibility of the metro district. It's a maintenance item. And then this final one actually goes to what was spoken to tonight with the pickleball. Public amenities that are officially dedicated to the town. However, they're treated as private by the residents of that metro district. And that goes against the spirit of this, of the metro districts and why they borrow money. In my opinion, it should be very clear that the amenities that are in these various metro districts are open to the public, and we need to make sure that these amenities, it's easy for the public to find out how they can access them. Obviously, we can't leave gates open to pools. That's a really, really bad idea. However, having posted information about how the public can access this and to have it readily available, not something that takes a week to go ahead and get access to is important. If it's going to be dedicated to the town, it needs to be available to the town and to the residents. So this is local municipalities with model service plans. Basically, you guys can read through this, but Greeley regulates mill levy caps, interest rates, disclosure statements, which we already have. Windsor has the lowest mill levy cap at 39, which is now up to 42 with the Gallagher adjustments. They also have 4 for operations and maintenance, 35 is for debt service. So when you bring it all together, it's up to 42 now, which I was mistaken. I thought that it was 39 for just debt service and then 15 for operations and maintenance, but I was mistaken. So it is actually the lowest that I was able to find up here. They also limit the developer cost reimbursement, basic site improvements, basic street utilities, curbs, gutters. For Windsor, they say, we highly discourage the use of a metro district to put in basic infrastructure that would be required of any residential development. They also put caps on interest rates and transparency requirements for meetings. Fort Collins has a mill levy of 50, and the interesting part about the Fort Collins one is that they put debt and operations and maintenance in one bundle, and they call it an aggregate total mills, and they have it at 50. But then they also do add in, if needed, an additional 5 mills for regional improvements that might be, outside of the metro district. Sometimes you do have to improve roads outside of your development. You might have to put in a roundabout or a stoplight, or even, on-ramps, off-ramps, changes to major highways, other regional improvements, sewer plants, water plant expansions, things like that, truly that is the cost of development. And we in town, we have already paid our fair share of those items. And this is a part of development paying its own way. So that is how Fort Collins deals with the regional improvements, is they charge 5 mills for that. And again, Fort Collins has transparency requirements and limits on developer cost reimbursements. Again, strongly discouraging the use of debt to fund basic site improvements. So why are we doing this? Glad you guys like that. So the idea behind this is to kind of get all of us on the same page. It gives the staff, the elected officials, to kind of the same tools to evaluate the projects on their merits. It also gives a roadmap to developers so that they know, hey, if they don't do these certain things, gosh, the board might reject it. And so they can see what we think are priorities for our town. And that's what we're going to kind of try and hash out tonight. This also creates, this particular service plan creates multiple opportunities for public input, which when we get a service plan on a Thursday before a Tuesday public meeting, and we're expected to vote on it or possibly just delay it by 2 weeks to get more public input, that does not give the public a whole lot of time to review this, nor the trustees. And sometimes these are millions of dollars and lots of homes. So this particular service plan has an introductory period where the developer comes with their basic plan before they apply officially for a service plan. So the town will get to look at it twice, or the town board will get to look at it twice, potentially 3 times. The public will be notified and have a chance to look at it at least twice. And we will also give the developer feedback so that the developer isn't surprised when they come to have their service plan approved, and the town board is not, on board with it. So it's a good thing for everybody. And again, this addresses quite a few of the concerns, and the plan has minimal changes from a service plan that has already been vetted. It's been adopted by another municipality, and it's been tested. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. I think there was very minimal changes to it, correct?
That's correct.
And so we really are taking the best parts of it that apply to our town, and we have cut out things that don't apply to our town. For example, we do not have any sort of an affordable housing plan. We don't have any tax increment financing districts. So those needed to be removed because we just don't have those policies. Now, if future boards do develop those policies, then this can be amended to include those opportunities. So we're going to move on here to the policy for reviewing service plans for metro districts. I tried to just hit the highlights here, guys, because we've had this policy available for a couple weeks now. So bottom line, the metro district must provide extraordinary benefits, not just standard benefits that we already have in our code. This has to go above and beyond our code. They must come to the board with the conceptual review, kind of like the neighborhood master plan that we have for developments now, so that we can see that development before the developer puts all this time, effort, and money into developing a plan that the board's not satisfied with. So the conceptual review will help the developer, it helps the board, it gets everybody on the same page. So the thing that was added to this particular piece of the puzzle is that we ask that there be written notice to property owners within 1,000 feet for public comment. And the reason that's added is because we don't want it to go on some metropolitan district website down in Denver. We want the public that lives right there to know about it. Must get approval from us at our sole discretion, but within the limits of Title 32. This does suggest limiting the mill levy to 50 aggregate for debt service and operations and maintenance. So for operations and maintenance, Fort Collins suggested 10 mills maximum. We took that out in this policy because there's been a lot of discussion about, we want them to maintain what they've built. We want them to have the flexibility to go up to the state statute limit so that the improvements that they do make, they can maintain. So we felt that that was important to take out that restriction. So that would allow it to be about 35 mills. If they went for the maximum for operations and maintenance, they'd have 35 mills for debt service and 15 mills for operations and maintenance. The additional 5 regional mills for regional improvements, which are some major improvements. The idea behind having that a little bit separate is that 5 mills would actually technically go to the town, so that the town could work with the developer to make these major intersection changes that, you know, we have funding for. We do have these various buckets of money that we intend to, from impact fees, we intend to use to improve these intersections. And this may not be the only development that uses this intersection. So it's an opportunity for the town to get that money to make improvements to that specific major infrastructure challenge. However, the town may not want to be in charge of those improvements, especially making it in time to coincide with the development. So as long as an intergovernmental agreement is made, what happens is the town collects the taxes through the various mill levies, then the town hands back the money to the developer so that the developer can make those improvements at the same time that they're doing all the other improvements in the area. So it kind of just makes sense. Technically though, if there were some improvements that the town wanted to have more control over, they could. The next one is bonds. We talked about this at a couple of our meetings. Bonds. On many of the Metro District service plans that we've received, they have said that the bonds would be sold at some bond index plus 3%, or some bond index plus 2%, or market rate plus 2%. So in the Fort Collins policy, in the Windsor policy, in the Greeley policy, they are all sold at market rate. There is no additional padding. So they also have in the Fort Collins one, the use of control districts, also known as service districts or managing districts, is not allowed or strongly discouraged. Each district in Fort Collins and Windsor's opinion should be their own directors. The owner should be able to be in charge of their debt. When they use service or managing districts, the service or managing district does all the borrowing. They have the ultimate vote on any additional debt beyond the initial debt that they incur. So although the separate districts do have their own board, they don't have the opportunity to have input directly on any additional debt that is created. So use of control districts is discouraged. I don't know, Attorney Smith, whether we could prohibit service districts. I couldn't find it in the state statute.
Well, and I think it's an open question. I think that the way that Fort Collins does it, as you point out, is they strongly discourage. And then they, of course, wrap all this into a policy.
Yes.
So if at any point they feel that their hands are tied by the policy, they get to suspend the policy and negotiate a different arrangement. So, yeah.
So again, also the basic infrastructure improvements are to be discouraged, and the emphasis on the debt issuance is for extraordinary development outcomes. And we will get to that shortly. Multiple districts also have some, in this policy, they also have some additional restrictions. One is a fee limitation, meaning this particular one means that the district cannot start charging taxes on the residents until they have completed their extraordinary benefits. At least it's in motion. So their extraordinary benefits, if it's a very large park with great amenities, they can't tax the residents until that is actually starting to be under construction. So that seems fair enough. If you wait till the extraordinary benefit, some great park is built, that's putting a heavy burden on the debt payments while the residents are not paying taxes. But if the residents start paying taxes on this great amenity that isn't built for 3, 4, 5 years, that also isn't fair. So this seems like a fee limitation, seems like a good, a really smart way to balance it. The next is an overview executive summary. So this service plan says that not only do they hand us the 400 pages of technical documents, financial statements, estimated costs for construction of various site improvements. This one states that they must give an overview executive summary, kind of condensing everything down into much more basic, here's what it's gonna run us to build this great park, and these are the amenities. And then this is how much it's gonna cost us to build this interchange for the town. And these are some of the basic major expenses. So instead of having a 400-page document, hopefully it's down to 20 or 30 pages, something that's somewhat digestible for the average Joe who might be elected to sit on this board. The next one is the financial plan. The financial plan is as it is right now. And hopefully we would get a little bit more of a condensed executive summary on that as well. But I'm not sure how exactly it is phrased in there. So we would get at least an overview in the Exhibit E. So the regional improvements, again, that is a separate line item. It's a separate mill levy. So now we're going to move on to extraordinary benefits. And actually, what we'll do is once we get through the extraordinary benefits, we can go back and visit either the policy for reviewing the service plans or the multiple district service plans. Again, I don't have the single district service plan because it is considerably simpler.
It's substantially the same.
Same.
It just uses the word district instead of districts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is substantially the same.
Okay, so now trustee Grace, would you like to go over, we will get up on the screen our touchstones.
Sure.
And kind of the extraordinary benefits that, some of them are in our code already, guys, so it's not gonna be a huge change. And then there are some additional ones that were in other communities' codes that seem like they're appropriate to put into a metro district. Trustee Grace?
So, okay, there we go.
There we go.
As Pro Tem Dower was saying, a lot of this is actually built into a lot of our touchstones when we kind of took a seat here at the board with what we wanted the town envisioning to go forward with. Thankfully, a good amount of this is actually already included with Fort Collins. Pro Tem Dower and I actually went through theirs and saw what matched with ours versus what was incongruent to what we could do, what wouldn't match or what really isn't our flavor. So urban forest canopy, I mean, not to go read all of this, I'm sure everybody else has read this as well. More specifically, the big things to take away when it comes to this is envisioning that, one, this is not the end-all be-all. This is absolutely changeable, editable. We can add more, take away more. We can value points differently. All of this is completely subjective to what we feel is appropriate. So this is all kind of just basic guidelines of, well, you want a metro district, okay. Here are some things we would like to see on top of. So you have urban forest canopy, making sure you're protecting trees, making sure you actually utilize some trees and large groves. Water conservation, I know we've been talking about non-pot systems. I know they're incredibly hard to do, but given the state of both most of the Midwest, it's going to become a very big necessity here before long. And if they can have a metro district help ease that pain, that would be very much appreciated, I think, on all fronts. Stormwater innovation, this was actually one that I didn't even know that they could help pre-treat rainwater and water runoffs before it even gets to treatment facilities, kind of ease the load on that. Further down, you have renewable energy. Again, none of this is commanded. This is all highly suggested or, pick and match which is going to fit with you. Solar gardens, EV charging stations, possibly outside a community center. Now at the bottom, you'll see the possible sustainability points versus required. Again, completely whatever the board at the time feels is appropriate versus excessive. Totaled up, if they did everything there and it was a unicorn, we could have up to 17, maybe more. We were, I guess, approaching this as a approachable number and something that is feasible of about a third. So mix and match whatever you want to do, similar to how we currently have our service plans where they have to hit so many points in certain areas, certain amount of open space, certain amount of parks, certain amount of trails, all of that has to fall within a point threshold. Further down, the community identity for, more open space, trails, you have different values of trails. So you have soft pack, you have hard pack, linear space with how it connects to the rest of the subdivision or other subdivisions. Active regional parks, that's absolutely something that if they had the wherewithal to do, they had the ability to fund it or could continue funding it through memberships or public interest, it could absolutely pay for itself. Sensory playground, it kind of builds into our playground model and requiring parks, open space. This one, the Aquatics, this is one actually Pro Tem Dower and I kind of went and talked about a little bit. this last summer with the town pool that had to be closed for various reasons, not having a viable option for a pool at that time was complicated. And as we all know, if it's a metro district, the amenities there are open to the public. Now, there is a price difference versus if you're a member of the metro district versus you're not, they can charge you more for that. And that's not an argued facet at all. The issue was, I know trying to find a couple of different places to go play in a pool, it was almost impossible to find. It was impossible to get a hold of anybody. It was impossible to get in touch with anybody, at least from my perspective. What this is pretty much requesting is, yes, you would have a pool. It's a little bit bigger than average. However, it's something that's visible. It's something that the public can walk up to and at least know how to get in. Yeah, they might have to pay extra, but it's now within the realm of possibility and not just, well, I hope somebody picks up the phone. I hope somebody's at the gate and can let me through. The other one that Pro Tem Dower and I talked about that I was actually really hoping for are the community buildings. Most subdivisions, I'm sure if anybody's gone through, they'll have a clubhouse. And it's used for various things. They'll have a computer room, they'll have a small gym in there, a kind of a conference room, but by and large, my experience is they are relatively either unused or underused. What we were trying to go for with the community workspace and community gathering spaces was it's actually usable because it opens itself up to not only the Metro District, but to the rest of the community under this plan. Ideally, it's something where people could show up and they could have classes there. There's meeting rooms. The community center actually near the public library is not adequate anymore for what it needs to be. This would kind of offset that and also open up options for the public at large to join other classes, meet with other people, combine that with an EV charging station and a big pool nearby. It can be a community hub with all those viable options available. Meeting groups for different Meals on Wheels, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all of those communities. So I guess the final one, the resiliency, strategic priorities. This one we couldn't really talk to with in specificity to affordable housing or in building or anything like that. That's not something that we currently have developed or as a part of our rules. So a lot of this was having to be removed from the Fort Collins version. So live work rental agreements to conserve space. It's already a 2-story. I believe that was current plans that we have in town. Housing diversity wise, off-site trail connections, pedestrian connectivity. A lot of this is actually a combination of regional and town wants. I know it would be amazing if we had a pedestrian underpass or overpass around 25. It would be monumentally time consuming, and I don't even know how the planning would go, but that's absolutely worth something in terms of contribution to the community because it's something that would be a necessity. I guess to round it all out, as all of these details, these are all things that were kind of an initial pass. This is by no means what we will and only consider. These are just ideas. These are conceptual, would be nice to have, or I think we need to reinforce this, as well as the point system value. I guess the biggest concept that this is supposed to kind of drive home is if they're asking for mill levy, we will able to, at that point, objectively with these points, determine the worthiness of that mill levy. Now say they decide they want to be A students and they want to completely wipe the board and get everything. Then they ask for, instead of 55, maybe they ask 75 or 80. At this point, it's well within the rights of the board that we wouldn't be able to allow that if that's something that they could provide. It does not mean they are locked in at 50 or 55 or whatever. If they can show a need and show what those extraordinary benefits are going to be paid for, this is what that would entail. So this is kind of putting an objective measurement on would be nice to haves, which is valued appropriately and weighted by what we feel is necessary for the town.
So what I'd like to point out here is that the extraordinary points that are on this chart were not just random. They were taken from our code, and anything that was in our code that we felt needed to be stepped up a little bit, we added from what our development code, our building codes, neighborhood master plans, points, we added on an additional benefit and we added on an additional point. So if you go down, Christian, would you go down to the resiliency and strategic priority one? Or we're on it. Okay, the next page of that one. So this one is the one that is maybe a little more aspirational, is the economic development. We do not have anything in our code right now about economic development to support that, to encourage that per se, that I was aware of, or that we could find. So that is something that I think should be to be determined by the next board. And so maybe we reduce the resiliency and strategic priority extraordinary benefit points by a couple points because we do not have that yet. The other ones are, they are based on what we have already in our code. So if we look at what Fort Collins had done, was they added up their points and they asked for 1/3 of their extraordinary benefits in points, required points. And so this is similarly based the same way. So at this time, what I'd like to do is first get your brief overview or brief response to the basics of this plan, and then to go over some of the community extraordinary benefits and see if there's things on there that you like, don't like, or we should cross off. Now, that being said, we have, this was allotted an hour, and we have about 20 minutes left. So if we could make our points, our salient points, so that we can look further into various areas, that would be appreciated.
Can
All
I ask
right.
a question?
Yes.
I want to understand extraordinary benefits is over and above the 50 mils, or what, or
It's just to get a metro district.
okay, so if I come in as a developer and all I want to do are streets and sidewalks and tree lawns and put in houses, and do roads, I cannot get a metro district, is that what we're saying?
What we're saying is that we really don't like it. We're gonna make you go back, and if you get to the town board and the town board says, wow, this really is pretty minimal, especially for those that are like in PUDs, so they're not in the current zoning, they're not in the current PUDs, that's gonna be a bit of a stretch. So because we are not home rule, we cannot say outright, no way, Jose. However, we can say, look, you're gonna come back to us, and maybe it might be in your best interest to bring something a little bit better forward to begin with.
Essentially, they can ask for it, but this is a way for us to kind of compare what they're offering versus, well, you're not really doing too much with it, so how about you spruce it up a little bit? Because we now have measurable things that we want to see here. So they can ask for it, sure, and we can either approve or deny it as well, but this is giving us a yardstick to measure it by.
No, I'm just going back to when we had the discussion with your partner, that, and I asked the question specifically, can we deny a metro district? And basically the answer was no.
But we can put conditions on it,
Well,
right?
I mean, you can not, the question that he was answering was, can you prohibit across the board metro districts?
Okay.
So that's, I don't believe you can. He doesn't believe you can. But the statute specifically says that you have the discretion, guided by the types of criteria that are in the state statute, to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. And so what I think Trustee Grace and Mayor Pro Tem Dower are bringing back to you are a way for you to take the statutory criteria, which is that the district, the creation of the proposed special district, will be in the best interests of the area proposed to be served. That's a statutory criteria. The statute doesn't say how you make that evaluation. It leaves to a statutory town like Berthoud to create the criteria for how you're going to evaluate best interest. And so what you're being presented with tonight is a approach for how you would evaluate best interests. And that would be through a extraordinary benefit being provided. And then how do you get, what are those extraordinary benefits? Then you refer to the chart. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, I'm just,
If there's no extraordinary benefit and
We
you
can deny it.
and these other criteria in the statute haven't been met, then the town has the discretion to
Okay.
deny.
Without this, we don't. Without a model service plan, as far as like, we don't, if they don't have any extraordinary benefits, but they just say, yeah, we want this money to do roads and water and sewer.
and the only reason that we could say no to Turion, or Turion, however you pronounce it.
And I don't really want to talk about that
Yeah, we
one.
can't talk about that.
What I just want to talk about is as we move forward, what you're looking at is sort of a process, right? Which is going to be helpful, I think, because you're going to have some earlier submittals. And that process is going to provide the board with an early look at what a developer wants to do with regard
Okay,
to
let me
special district.
let me rephrase that. So if there was a developer that already had a service plan in place and wanted more, they would still have to adhere to this.
Yes, an amendment to a service plan would be covered.
Okay.
You'd have to massage perhaps some of the provisions, because some of what this calls for is at the creation of the districts, and you're past the creation of the districts. So you would just have to, there'd be some nuances to what's contained in the policy and the special district and the model.
That answers my question.
Okay, good deal.
It said Mayor Carspec for the transit thing.
For the transit.
I reached out to the MPO, Alex, who's their transit planner, got back to me on Sunday. His email had a black background, so I replied asking for a graph that I could read. But I read the other half of the paragraph, which he gave me some examples of other communities. Rockville, Maryland charges 10 cents per square foot for commercial and retail developments and $60 per unit for residential development over a 10-year period. And this goes into their transportation demand management funding. Palo Alto charges $3,500 per net new unit. It doesn't matter if that's commercial or residential. And then he actually broke it down for Berthoud, but that's what has a black background. So it would actually be really neat to see. I responded saying, could I see it with a white background, but it's kind of cool. I think it's cool they got back that quickly. Unfortunately, not in time to get it in here.
So you said something over 10 years, like a set amount, is that per year over 10 years, or
Yes,
is that
that's the way I
one?
read that.
Okay,
That's the way I read that, yes.
so
But I can't say for sure.
that potentially might be a way to help support bats and raft and,
This was for, a TDM program for the actual development. So I think it would be something for a circulator or a shuttle for that particular
for
development.
that development,
So-
but not necessarily to connect to the rest of town.
It could be, it could connect to the rest of town. I think it would just originate at the development.
Can you highlight the text in the email? Sometimes it'll reverse it.
I tried to and it won't, yeah.
He highlighted the important stuff in black because it was so important.
But I just want to add that.
Redacted your email.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you both for, everyone involved in this for, I think it's incredibly impressive. What gets me opposed to metro districts and just something that actually gets me excited for metro districts is this policy, and to see, I didn't know any of this existed, extraordinary benefits, whatnot. And for upcoming metros and stuff, this is exactly what would get me as a citizen on board with something like that. It makes it inviting, something for myself as an existing citizen to do. And I think a prospective person coming into Berthoud would see more value out of the money they're paying for a metro district. If they see some of these, I mean, buffered bike lanes seem so simple, but it's great to get that in there. Thanks.
Actually, I'll just go on to. So this is one example of an extraordinary benefit that could be help funded by a metro district should it apply. And if we had this in place when, say, Prairie Star went in, you know, we might have a connection already, or at least movement on a connection and some financial support for it. So that would be an underpass. This is in Louisville, and that was, you know, that, yeah, that's over Highway 36. So again, that's a pedestrian bridge, again, that is over a major highway, and because we do have a couple major highways around our town, we will need help with that. And wow, if we had metro districts helping us, you know, plan for and pay for this, maybe even help us construct it, that'd be fantastic. Then again, this one I found online, the sensory playgrounds, we're talking about that more often now. One of the ones I saw online was an indoor sensory playground. And, you know, other than the rec center, we don't have any other indoor places like some of the other towns do where they have, you know, children's museums and such. And wouldn't that be a huge benefit if in somebody's community building, they actually had, you know, a indoor playground for kids to go to, that would be run by the Metro District and open to the public for a fee. So.
I think we said major highways and stuff, like I look at High Plains too. I think that might be an example.
Yes.
And that's I don't know what, it's not even a highway, I don't know what you call that.
It's an arterial.
So I think we would
yes.
might maybe consider adding that too.
It's in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a regional improvement.
Yes, a regional
Which
improvement.
the pedestrian crossings would be as well, right? Those would be regional.
Yes, the major pedestrian crossings are regional.
Okay.
Let's see, some other, so we talked about the transit. Another thing that is not on here but was brought up, and this is important, thank you Tim, or Trustee Hardy for bringing this up. Water, bringing water with them. A serviceable source of water, this would be an extraordinary benefit, right? A serviceable source of water has been identified with enough supply to meet the demand of X number of single-family equivalents proposed. So there would be 0 points for cash in lieu, because that's expecting the town to come up with the water at some point in the future. We don't know the cost of water. So an extraordinary benefit would be to bring, you know, a certain percentage of an identified source, maybe not purchased, but an identified source of that water that could potentially be purchased or leased, right? There's multiple ways to get that water. So if that metro district comes to us and says, you know what, we have 20% of the water for this particular, you know, number of homes or single family equivalents, because some might be townhomes or apartments or businesses that don't use as much water, right? So we have to go with FSEs or SFEs. So maybe they come with 15% or 20% and we give them 1 extraordinary point. If they come with an identified source for 50% of the homes over that build period, if it's 5 years versus 20 years, then we give them 2 extraordinary points, et cetera. So there are ways that we can encourage them to actually bring water with their development rather than running, what is the town that just had to stop all Severance? So we don't want to run into a situation like Severance has where they started homes, they gave permits for these homes, and all of a sudden there is not enough water. So this would be a way for us to know at least they're bringing some of the water with them. The other thing that is a little bit interesting is we talked about the bicycle and pedestrian improvements with separated bike lanes. That would be an extraordinary benefit because it's above and beyond what we require now, and it'd really be a safety enhancement for the town. Another one would be, this is, aside from the community buildings, this is something that was in the Fort Collins one that was really neat, and that is a community workspace, and that would go into like our enterprise zone, other, what do we call mixed use areas that would provide workspaces. So not necessarily meeting rooms, but performance spaces, kitchens, restrooms. And this is the one where we talked about like potential users, Meals on Wheels. They have a need for kitchen facilities, and so does a Little Help, but we could not provide those in the rec center that we built. We just didn't have enough money to spend money on a commercial kitchen. So wow, that would be great if in a commercial mixed-use zoning or innovation district transect place type that we could get a community workspace from that metro district. Now, they would be responsible for operations and maintenance of the building itself, and they could charge, some sort of fee, but it should be, reasonable and allow these different nonprofits to come in and use it. So I thought those were interesting, and this is for context. The Fort Collins also had in theirs, they had 0.25% for arts and culture. And I thought, well, we're just a little town. We don't need, 0.25% for arts. That's, that seems excessive. So we went with 0.1% of the amount borrowed. So of the debt incurred. So for example, just throwing a number out there for a $500 million development, that would be $500,000 for arts over the course of that build out of that development. $500,000. So maybe 0.1% is maybe still too much, but maybe not. 0.1%.
Art's not cheap.
Good art isn't.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions?
Yeah, so we've had a few developments where they've come in at the very initial part and you get to that stage 2 or 3 of the whole development, and they say, yeah, we're gonna build a swimming pool, and we're gonna put in a solar farm, and we're gonna do this, and then 5-10 years down the line, they come back and say, well, we really can't build the pool, it got too expensive in the last 5 years, or we decided not to do the solar farm because, well, we decided to build more homes in that area. How do we hold them accountable for these extraordinary benefits so that they don't come back later and go,
okay,
yeah, pools cost too much now, we decided to do something else, or so townhomes, we're doing single family homes, so.
2 ways. One is the fee limitation clause. That says that they cannot start charging their mill levies. They cannot tax the residents of that district until they are on their way to building said extraordinary benefits. Now, if they get to that point and they already have their metro district, right? But they've lost the points because they never built out those items. Honestly, we're kind of stuck. There are some provisions in here for fines and, compelling them to complete those items. It is in here.
Okay.
However, do we know how it's actually going to work in the future? I can't say that we'll be able to you know,
So then
kind
how's
of
that get
work that.
enforced? Who's gonna hold them accountable?
Well, they can't collect the money until they start building
From the Metro District, from the
from the
state?
citizens.
Oh.
They can't collect the
then-
money if they haven't started building it.
One of the other things that we had in there is that, I remember reading in our Metro District things, they can't do eminent domain. But a recent article came up last week in my social media feeds, forget which, I think it was Channel 7 or Fox. But they were talking about this Metro District that had an HOA, and there's 60 homes being foreclosed on now because of fees that they didn't pay. So would Metro Districts in our area or with this plan have the ability to foreclose on a home?
The Metro District would have the right to foreclose on the home if the homeowner is in default on paying its taxes.
Okay.
So, yeah, that,
So just like the county could foreclose on your home if you didn't pay your
yeah, I
county
mean,
taxes?
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think that has anything to do with eminent domain.
Yeah,
So-
it's.
I was just curious, you know, because I
Okay.
just, it was like, whoa, I didn't realize that Metro District, you know, they can't do eminent domain, but they can foreclose on a home. I figured they could put a lien on your home.
Well, by statute, all special districts have the right of eminent domain. The service plans typically across the state of Colorado will put some limitations on that right of eminent domain, and Fort Collins did as well.
Yeah, it's in here.
It
Yes.
put a limitation that said no ability to use your power of eminent domain unless the town approves it.
Because there will be times when the district does have to do improvements and they will need, they may need in extraordinary circumstances to
But they
utilize
don't have that
eminent
much
and-
power.
And so they'd have to come to the town board.
So we gotta hit 24 points.
No, that's max
Oh, so,
for resiliency.
For,
So
are
that's
we-
your maximum points on that, and then
so how many do you need to hit to get started, I guess?
Okay, you need 8 on resiliency. You need, on community identity, you need 10. So 8 and 10 is 18. And then under environmental sustainability, you need 7.
Now, is there a reward system in place in case they exceed those minimums? Do we give them?
well, that's where if they say they want to be the unicorn and they want to just get everything, and they can ask at that point, can we go past 50? Can we get 75 mils? Because this is a lot of stuff we want to do.
Yeah.
Then it comes to the discretion of the board, like, well, yeah, we've got this measurable thing, you're wanting to do this. All the financial advisors are saying, yep, it's possible and everything lines up.
So we're just giving them a water line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
They're below it, they're drowning. If you're above it and you're swimming, then you can
Yeah, so they can
either
ask
get
for
the
more.
unicorn
It's-
floaty or the yacht.
You can ask
You
for more.
they can ask for more, they're allowed to ask for more, but as that number gets bigger and bigger, then that threshold of,
Okay.
can we ask for more? That gets a little bit easier, because now we're seeing they're playing by what we want the town to have.
We're raising the bar just not that high.
Yeah, or, if they want just 50, then, they got their minimums there, and that's fine too. Or if they don't wanna do it at all, then, that's also fine. But then they don't get a metro district. But again, they can also ask for one, and we can say yes or no depending on this. This is just a guideline for us, a guideline for them, a guideline for staff. It's kind of up to our discretion. But this kind of puts everybody on the same page.
Just trying to play scenarios in my head, like they say they've got the water, but then they don't, and then.
Trustee Steve?
Ray, you had a question, go ahead.
Go ahead, you first.
I just wanna make sure I understand some of these little points. There, according to Fort Collins's, no service or district, like, there wouldn't be a
Service district?
a service district that divvies out the money, basically. That's a no-no?
No, it's just discouraged.
It's discouraged. It's
Okay.
discouraged.
And then, I didn't notice a different mill levy between commercial and residential.
That is in one of the documents. It does talk about the mill levies. We're not doing anything with the mill levies for commercial, and they're typically around 45 mils.
Okay.
Yeah, it expressly says that commercial can be greater. can go over the cap.
And my concern on that is we had talked about, why don't we reverse that, higher mill levies for commercial than residential?
Honestly, we didn't address that specifically, because right now we are trying to encourage commercial, and so they can go above
Okay,
it. There's
okay.
no limits on that. But to encourage residential, or to encourage commercial, we felt like it was probably a good idea to not,
And oftentimes you need the residential in order to encourage the resident, or the
Yeah.
commercial.
yeah.
And just again, so I can understand the service district, that seemed to me to be a good bookkeeping way to keep the books and keep the other districts even. Why is that a bad thing?
Would you like to address that, Trustee Grace?
Why is the district?
Or-
Either one. I mean, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a mechanism to distribute bonds and how these things are upheld. It's totally allowed. It's discouraged because the idea is if there's a service district and they're borrowing money for here, it's really hard to keep accountability of this service district's paying for this and this and this, and making sure it's all equal across the board is kind of my understanding. It's just making sure that if your tax dollars are going to this metro district, it's getting spent in this metro district
Okay.
only. And
Well-
sometimes when you're moving all that money
And we had
around.
talked about that, and you made it the other way around.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what gets you to, as Trustee Gray says, it's not either good or bad, but as he points out, what you have oftentimes is a regional improvement that benefits all of those who are burdened by that tax. So again, it's a growth pays its way, and that's why you have a service district, because you might have some large regional improvement that all of the other districts that came on at different times and had different, some might be residential in character, some might be commercial in character, but they all benefit from these large regional improvements. So you would have the service district to bond and bond for those large regional improvements, and then you would receive taxes from all of the taxing districts. So that's why they exist. Or
Okay.
they exist because there's a large amenity, some very nice large amenity that everybody has the benefit of using the golf course or the large recreational facility or something like that. So that's why you have a service district that gets taxes from these other smaller taxing districts.
Can I ask a question regarding that? So for the individual service districts that have their own amount of debt, would you still have the service district manage that debt, or could that particular district manage its own debt so that its own board of directors have more oversight and control of their individual debt? Or does it always have to go to the service, the overall service district?
The other districts have the ability to issue their own debt.
Okay. So,
Yeah, because each district is its own separate political subdivision. And what they operate independently, they have their own independent boards, and they can issue their own debt. But they enter in early on in the process when the developer understands that he has to build these large regional improvements. The service district enters into intergovernmental agreements with the taxing districts. And they are bound under those agreements to tax, to levy a tax, and to turn the proceeds of that tax over to the service district.
so it seems like if there is a very large amenity that is shared by the entire development, and or there is a large regional improvement, that those would be managed by the service district or the managing district. However, the improvements that are associated with each individual the separate districts that are in that area that are maybe developed at different times, they would have their own board keeping control of the debt service that is associated with just their district.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, at the beginning, when the developer is advancing all the money out of their own pocket to pay for these things, they probably compile all of that debt and put it into the service district. That's typically how it's done. But it doesn't, I don't know that that's always how it's done.
Because that's the thing that concerns me, is that when the central district controls all of the debt issuance and their board is typically made up of the developer and the developer's family and that sort of thing, versus the boards of each individual district, they have no say, really, because the debt is managed by the central district.
Well, and the debt was issued before they moved in.
Right,
So.
but, just in the future, say they collect more taxes than they anticipate and they pay off their debt early, but potentially the central district doesn't refund the debt? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can envision a way that would happen. But I think it goes back to, having a policy like this and a model service plan that would say, show us why that's important to you.
Okay.
And that's the benefit of the way this document was conceived.
There's
And and thank you, the flexibility in it, yeah.
So why can't you have a service desk?
Can May speak? We haven't
Yes,
had that.
May, sorry, May.
No, it's okay. Actually, I have so many questions and I want to ask if we can move this into a study session because this is a really big deal and a long-term deal. And I feel like you guys did a great job summarizing it so that we have it encapsulated a little bit more. But I don't want to miss anything. So can we move this to a study session so we can ask staff more questions and kind of roll around some of these now that we have the points kind of nailed down? I think that would be helpful, especially as it's getting late. I don't want to miss anything.
Sounds like a motion.
No, I totally agree. I'm starting to fade too, so I think this
Yeah.
is so important, this needs its own.
Okay, and I don't disagree with that, but I do have a couple comments. So, this definitely would have been, I think, more appropriate for a study session. And I don't really disagree. I think you guys have put in a lot of work, and I think that's commendable. I just feel like this should have come up earlier. But anyway, how do you want to do? I've got like 10 questions here. I can just rattle them off, or do you want us to submit them to staff ahead of the study session? I mean, we're kind of running out of time, right? We have, I'm counting, I have 3 meetings left.
4 now.
So, I think if we're gonna try and do anything before the next board, this has gotta be like a study session next week, so.
Yeah, next week.
I'm open for that.
Is that your spring break?
Mine? What?
Not
We
yours.
don't need him.
Administrator Kirk.
I may or may not be on spring break, but we had planned to be on vacation next week.
So what, should I rattle off my questions, or what do you guys wanna do?
I say rattle them off.
Okay.
I do think it would be helpful to have a study session. I mean, I have a lot of questions too.
Yeah.
We have 45 more minutes of topics to cover tonight.
So is there a
Yeah.
motion to end this and move into a study session?
I don't think we need that if you want it, but, so do you want to set a date, 15th or the 29th?
I'll be out of town the
I
29th.
can't do the 15th.
Okay. The other option is
Is
just to
there-
move it into the next board, but I agree, we should just keep going, get it done with.
And is Tuesday night the only night that we can do it, or can we have a study session on a different night of the week?
Like a Monday night?
I think that's.
We can have a meeting whenever we want.
I can't do Monday nights, unfortunately.
Thursday night?
And we need you there.
I can do Thursdays typically. I can't do some Wednesdays, but
I typically cannot do Wednesdays, but I could do pretty much any other night of the week.
How about next 17th?
So Thursday.
Well, that's not gonna
That's
help.
that same week I intend to be
That's not
out
gonna
on
help.
vacation, but,
Tells you what I'm fading so quick, so,
No. Yeah.
we could do this on the reports and figure out a date, we just need to know a study
Yeah.
session before the next board.
Well, it's gotta be a study session and then an ordinance
No, it'd be a resolution.
resolution. Anyway, so there's gotta be time for direction and then scheduling it for action on the 12th. I mean, I guess it could be the 26th, but that's usually not an action meeting for the board that's leaving.
So,
So April 12th would be the last action meeting for this board.
April 12th, okay. So if we look at April 12th would be the last day for an action. And the week of the 14th through the 18th is out. Could we meet potentially on the 24th?
Yeah.
Works for me.
Does that work for everybody? 24th, okay. All right.
All right, 24th, does that work for staff? Attorney Smith?
Yes.
Could
Does that work for you?
Could we do
Commissioner?
the 23rd? Is that?
Well, so I think
Wednesday doesn't work.
I'm already committed to speak to the Rotary Club on Wednesday night.
So I think it would be
24th.
it would be really
I never
important
attend.
to have questions before that so that we can have direction at that meeting. And I'm happy to write up my questions or, like I said,
It'd be helpful to have the questions.
It would be incredibly helpful to have the questions ahead of time, yeah.
Okay.
And I
So
think-
it
do you
would
want it right now?
be
It would be really helpful,
The 24th of March.
so I think, I have a lot of questions and concerns about the extraordinary benefits matrix, not because I don't think it's a good idea, but because I think it needs a lot of fleshing out. And so I think there's some work that we need to do there, but I think the concept makes sense. Outside of that, I think the things that we've heard are a mill levy cap. It sounds like maybe there's some support for that. The governance structure, that's an interesting and challenging one, I think, under the context of the Fort Collins plan where it says it's to be discouraged. I always have a hard time as the person tasked with enforcing or implementing policy with things that are gray. So the governance structure I think is important, or it sounds like. Anyway, I don't know that we'll solidify the list of things that we need to address, and specifically address in the policy. So maybe it is best if you guys just submit all your comments and questions. We'll compile those, and then when we put together a packet for a study session, it will include all of your questions as well as our answers and responses so that those are all available for transparency purposes. And then how we might suggest that you deal with those in the formation of the policy. If that makes sense.
so one thing I think will be important is to hire some sort of a consultant, financial expert to do some analysis, because I certainly don't feel capable of doing that. And I think some of what we're talking about, like a mill levy cap, there's all sorts of different levels. And I mean, we are not Fort Collins, so I don't know that what Fort Collins or Windsor or other places have makes sense for Berthoud. Especially with some of the unique developments that would need metro districts. Anyway, so that would just be, several of my questions are related to how a mill levy cap, especially on the O&M, would affect existing and future metro districts. And also, there was suggestion in the past that a lot of these costs just get put onto the cost upfront of the house or the lot, which I think might have a great impact on the price of real estate as opposed to spreading it out over 30 years in property taxes for the people who are enjoying the benefits. So anyway, so I think that we might want to find a independent third party that can analyze that, and it's a pretty small field, right? So maybe the
financial consultant that we know the best is also the one that is representing Turion, so.
That's my point.
So yeah, we'd have to find somebody else.
Okay, well, anyway.
I mean, if they were gonna provide you some guide.
Yeah, but 50 miles.
But I agree, I think there's some financial questions that I can't answer, certainly, and there would be some benefit to having a financial consultant involved.
Okay, so we'll shoot for the 24th. Great suggestion, Trustee Sorcelli. Eloquently put. Does that work with everyone? Any other else before we move on?
I would say we should have our questions to staff by when, Chris? End of the week?
Well, that's a good question, because we're gonna be preparing for board meeting on the 22nd. Normal regular board meeting on the 22nd. And I will be on vacation for a good chunk of the week before that. But if you could have us something.
Tonight.
By
If you
Friday.
could have us something by tomorrow I think
By the end of the week?
the more time we have, the better. Let's just put it that way, but certainly no later than, I think, the 17th. That would be helpful, but I mean, depending on the nature of the question, if we don't get it till the 17th, we may not have an answer for you on the 24th. So, and I
Also,
think,
can everybody agree to just have questions by this Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the wisest move. Give you guys the most time so you can look at them and you can distribute the questions to staff as needed. And so you can go on vacation knowing that at least some of the questions are going to be potentially looked at and addressed prior to your arrival back.
So that's by the 11th. Yeah, that way hopefully you could farm out some of them to be worked on in your absence.
Actually, you're not in the office on Fridays then, correct?
my staff is not, nor am I officially in the office, but yes, most Fridays I'm doing something, so.
So let's aspire to get it to you
Yes,
on
strongly
Thursday.
encouraged.
Strongly encouraged by Thursday, and if not, then by Friday.
Thursday versus Friday doesn't make any difference to me, so.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. Let's move on now. Number 5, snow removal code update. This is a public hearing. And so with the public hearing, we'll have staff give a presentation. The board can ask questions to staff. We'll open it up to the audience for any public comment on that and then bring it back to the board for deliberation and a vote. We have Cliff Samora with us.
Hello. And Teresa Morgan, our Neighborhood Services Officer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for staying this late.
Oh, sure. It's been great. All right, well, good evening, Mayor and trustees. This evening, we'll be going over 3 separate ordinances. 2 of them will be second readings and public hearings. And we will work to be as efficient as possible, being cognizant of the hour that we're at right now. So first up, we do have the snow removal code update. This was introduced at the last board meeting on February 22nd. Bit of a recap, this would repeal and reenact duplicate and conflicting code sections into one single section in the municipal code. It would remove a general arterial road exception, that being an exception that any sidewalks along arterial roads do not need to be cleared. That would remove that exception. However, there is a bit of a clarification that will be provided as well after hearing feedback from the board at the last board meeting. It does also remove a 4-hour snowfall exception. What that is that if snow falls within 4 hours, the 24-hour window for snow removal resets. So if you have a snowstorm, it snows again in 3 hours, that 24-hour window is moving forward. And unfortunately, that does allow for snow and ice to build up on the sidewalks if it's not being cleaned as it's falling. And then it also does change the responsible party for enforcement from the Public Works Director to the Town Administrator or their designee. We won't send Chris out there to enforce it, at least not all the time.
He's got the pickup truck.
Yes. And then as a reminder, as Mayor Karsbeck indicated, this is a public hearing this evening. Looking at the feedback received at the last board meeting, we did include an additional section in the ordinance articulating what sidewalks would be exempt from this regulation. Those sidewalks being specific sidewalks along Spartan Avenue. Put together a little bit of an illustration here so that we can visually see where those sidewalks are. Essentially, it would be sidewalks along Spartan Avenue that abut on the rear or the side of the lot that the resident wouldn't typically have normal access and would require them to physically go around the entire block to clear a short section of sidewalk. And you will see that it does not apply to sidewalks within metropolitan districts, since they do typically normally have their own snow clearing service that they do provide. And the reason why that is included is because there is a short section of sidewalk on the eastern side of that lower strip on the south side of Spartan that is owned by a metropolitan district. So we are happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions, trustees? We'll do comments later. Not seeing.
All right.
This time I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the audience? We're online?
There's not.
All right, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Well.
Thank you for including the Spartan
Yeah.
exception.
Yes.
That's it.
Makes a lot
Thank
of
you
sense.
for redoing it and getting it all the way we wanted it, so thank you.
Most definitely. Thank you for the feedback.
All right, if there's nothing else, is there?
Move to approve ordinance 1301, an ordinance of the town board of the town of Berthoud repealing and reenacting section 15.12 of the Berthoud Municipal Code with respect to snow removal.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion's been seconded. Any final discussion on that? Mr. Clerk, we have a roll call vote, please.
I'll defer to
Deputy, yes.
Clerk.
Deputy Clerk, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Sarasoli,
Yes.
Trustee Grace,
Yes.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Karspecht.
Yes. Next on our agenda is the Weed, Brush, and Animal Control Code update. This is also a public hearing. Clerk Samora.
All right, so as with the previous ordinance, this was introduced at the February 22nd board meeting. Bit of a recap, it does amend the definition of rubbish and refuse to include leaves and cut branches within public view. Adds a definition for vegetation to include anything that is not defined as brush in the municipal code. Brush is defined as trees and shrubs, so this would include everything else. And as a reminder, that is in regard to obstructions of right-of-way. So if there is a sidewalk or a street that's obstructed by anything that is not defined as brush, which would be a tree or a shrub, this would help for enforcement to ensure that that right-of-way or sidewalk is clear for vehicular and pedestrian access. And then it does add the additional term of neighborhood services officer in the definition of animal control officer. And this item is also a public hearing.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this agenda item? It's gonna make it awkward. Doesn't sound like there's anyone online.
No, there's
All
not.
right, I'll bring it back to the board. Sounds to me. All right, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance 1302, an ordinance of the town board of the town of Berthoud, amending the Berthoud Municipal Code with respect to weeds, brush, and animal control.
Second.
All right, Trustee Stevens has moved, Trustee Grace is seconded. Any final discussion on that? Deputy Clerk, we have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Trustee Sarasoli,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Grace,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower,
Yes.
Mayor Karspecht.
Yes. All right, finally, we have a parking on public property code update. This is also introduced by Clerk Samora.
Thank you, Mayor Karspecht. The last item on the agenda is an introduction of an ordinance regarding parking on public property. This is ordinance 1303. In the packet, it did indicate 1302, so that will be 1303. This ordinance would provide authority to the Neighborhood Services Officer to enforce parking regulations that are found within the Model Traffic Code. It would prohibit overnight parking of certain commercial vehicles in residential zone districts. We will get into a few examples of what those commercial vehicles would be. It does also provide limitations on vehicle length for vehicles that are parked or stored on public property, as well as maintaining intersection visibility and a sight triangle of 40 feet for particular vehicles, specifically larger vehicles like RVs and things of that nature. A few common model traffic code violations, just to give a few examples of what you may find in the model traffic code. Improperly parked vehicles, vehicles parked too closely to an intersection. I'm sure we've never seen that happen before. Vehicles parked opposing to traffic, which can cause safety concerns, as well as vehicles obstructing fire hydrants. Regarding commercial vehicles and overnight parking, it would prohibit parking for more than 60 minutes between the times of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. Would not apply in zone districts C1, C2, M1, or M2. For the types of vehicles that it would include, it would be vehicles bearing apportioned plates, having a gross vehicle weight rating of 16,001 pounds or more, vehicles designed to tow or transport other vehicles, or vehicles used to transport hazardous materials. So a few examples, visual examples of what we are looking at as how the commercial vehicles are defined in this particular ordinance. You can see that the vehicles bearing apportioned plates would typically be your larger tractor trucks, 18-wheelers, things of that nature. Vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of 16,001 pounds or more. And keep in mind that that would be a commercial vehicle used in commerce. So large delivery trucks, things of that nature. And that would prohibit overnight parking on public property. Keep in mind that that would not prohibit overnight parking on private property. This would only be on public streets and right-of-way. And then vehicles designed to transport or tow other vehicles, and then vehicles transporting hazardous materials in such quantities that they would require the placard that I'm sure we've all seen on tankers and things of that nature. So we're open to any questions or feedback. This would be brought back at the March 22nd board meeting if the town board wishes for that to occur.
This would exclude like a moving truck if someone's moving in, right?
Correct. You will see in the ordinance that it does specifically articulate that for moving vehicles, they can be stored on public property for a period of 24 hours.
Okay, and then my next one is down in Massachusetts. There's an issue sometimes with a large yellow truck that's way too big for the parking spaces down there, but yeah, it tends to park in 1.5 spaces. Would that be one that would be excluded or be in violation?
Well,
Because it's
I'm
not
not
a
sure
private
that that
street,
would
it's a
fall
public street.
specifically under an exclusion for commercial vehicles, but if it is improperly parked, that would fall under the model traffic code to be addressed.
Okay. So it has to be perfectly between the lines, or would it be parked overnight? Because it's a public street, it's not on a private parking lot for any apartment or business.
Now, if it is that large, it could quite possibly also fall under the restrictions placed upon overnight parking of commercial vehicles. So it really would depend on the type of vehicle, but it sounds like that it is technically improperly parked, and so it could be addressed in a different way as
It's just a
well.
big 14-foot moving Ryder truck.
You're just gonna have to move your truck.
Yeah, so for the most part, it seems like if you have it, if it needs a CDL, it can't be overnight.
So with the gross vehicle weight rating, the idea behind that is that it's not going to include smaller commercial vehicles, say like a Chevrolet Express van or something of that nature that you would see with a plumbing company or something like that. It would be larger commercial vehicles, commercial movers, transports and things like that.
Yes, if you could refresh my memory, M1 and M2 zone districts, could you tell me what those were?
Those are the industrial zone districts. That's mainly along the 2nd Street corridor.
Okay. Would trailers, say, I had a haul behind trailer and I parked that in front of my house, it's public, but I'm just making sure that this is not including that.
So in the ordinance, you'll see that there are length restrictions on vehicles with attached trailers. If it is detached, you will see in the ordinance that it would be prohibited if it is not attached to a vehicle, and that would be properly attached in accordance with the model traffic code.
Okay. I guess the only other question I have is the 8th. I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about on 8th, as you kind of go around the apartments just south of here. Because, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
It's gone.
Oh, for individuals that need places to park, are there any suggestions? Because I know it's not so much punishment, but also, hey guys, can't do that, but here's where you would park. Are there any suggestions?
There are designated spaces along 2nd Street that could be utilized for the larger commercial vehicles.
Even though the sign states.
That are public.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
That's all I had.
Questions? All right, this time I'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone in the audience that would wish to speak to this agenda item, please come to the dais or the podium.
Mayor, there's nothing.
Mr. Larson? And if you could please state
Sat
your
here
name and your address.
Sat here for 4 hours, you might as well say something.
Say hi.
Name is Lynn Larson, 205 Hubble Street. I always want to say 205 Bertha, but 205 Hubble Street. I want to understand, we have some people who live in our neighborhood. They park their work vehicles on Welch at the very end. Well, it's the very end now. Soon it will not be the very end. One is a pickup with let me call it a front-end loader type on the trailer behind. Another is a person who obviously hauls horses and often parks the pickup with the horse trailer. Would this ordinance prohibit them from parking at that point? Soon, it's gonna be a moot point because there's gonna be development there. But at this point, how would this affect those two residents of our neighborhood?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Anyone online?
Yes.
All right. Clerk or, can I call you NSO Morgan? I don't know if the
Me,
abbreviated
NSO?
title. Okay. Could you answer that question, please?
Certainly. So in the ordinance, that would fall under 2 regulations. Within the ordinance, you'll see that there is a section that articulates vehicles that have trailers with machinery on the back that is only permitted if it's an active construction site. And then regarding the vehicle with the horse trailer behind it, that would fall under the length limitation within the ordinance.
Length limitation?
Length limitation?
So it sounds like the answer is those would be prohibited.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Just in time, Lynn.
All right. How does everyone feel about this? In favor?
Looks good.
Move forward. Looking forward to the comments on Facebook when you
Anyone
start
wish,
going on
Oh,
Pocket
it's gonna be fun.
Anyone wish to move on this? Oh, no, we don't need to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we gotta do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, are we taking, potentially taking action? No, okay, so we'll do reports next, and then we can go into executive session. And we'll start reports off with Administrator Kirk.
Nothing for me tonight, Mayor.
Okay, Attorney Smith?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
All right, Trustee Grace?
Well, nothing.
Trustee Stevens?
Just real quick, 2 questions. That road by where I work, I keep forgetting the name of it, where the.
Franklin?
Yeah, Franklin. Is there a potential date when that will be completed? Nope.
The extension beyond
Yeah.
Agile RF? No, we don't have that.
Nothing at all, okay. And the only reason I'm asking is, gentleman I work for, one of the managers, our truck traffic is gonna increase a lot.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that was the only, so I'll pass that on. And then on Road 17 from 4 down to Spartan, who is responsible for that road upkeep? Is it us?
Road 17 from 4, south of Spartan, you mean?
Correct.
We're responsible for a portion of it. The majority of that is in the county. So everything south of, I'd have to look at the map.
And I know two developments have been approved.
I'm sorry, I always get 2 and 4 mixed up. We're responsible down to 4, I believe.
Okay. All right, so there's a pothole issue, that's all.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I-
just let us know, well, I'll let our crews know if they haven't identified it already. The pothole, our new construction standards also require developers that are building adjacent to roads like that to do material testing, so they'll core out the road and look at the existing structural section. If it's not suitable for the amount of traffic that you're gonna generate, they have to enhance the structural section of that road too, so.
Oh, I got it here, thank you.
Trustee Hardy.
Oh, where do I start? Let me open up my computer, got about 45 minutes here. No, sorry.
Nothing? All right, Trustee Hyman.
So pretty much heard about the port meeting as far as the discussion, since those were on our agenda tonight. But then also staff gave an update, so, and I forget the name of the gentleman who's in charge of the Cedar Drive project, but anyway, you guys may be familiar with the median strip in Cedar Drive, which is basically covering a ditch. But anyway, that's gonna get redone this summer with natural vegetation so that it's not a maintenance and water black hole, which it is at the moment. Amanda talked about the rec center pool hitting maximum capacity like multiple times in the last month. So I guess great news that we're so popular, but bad news that we're hitting capacity at this early stage.
There's a difference between legal capacity and capacity that we're comfortable with. So for clarity, and I need to confirm with Amanda, but I think what she's saying is we set a capacity limit based on our lifeguard setup. It can technically accommodate more people than that capacity limit.
It's gonna take the water out.
Well, anyway, like I said, good news, bad news, right?
It is good news, bad news.
And then she talked about the wildfire arts programs moving ahead. She mentioned, I didn't catch the name, but Silver and Fit. We're in negotiations with being able to get some sort of a insurance reimbursement for seniors.
We've been working on that for a year. We did finally sign the agreement, and Silver and Fit should be available for anybody whose insurance company will is part of that program in the next week or so. I think it should be. I think our staff is training on their software system.
Silver, awesome.
When will that be effective?
It should be effective like any day.
And then Carolyn Hobson, one of the port members, reminded and promoted the Berthoud Bash on April 9th. So if you want to support Berthoud schools, support the Berthoud Bash. And then really quick, this is not relevant to us, but I opened a copy of the CML newsletter. There's a really incredible story here about the Louisville water plant operators that drove into the fire zone to keep water flowing to the firefighters during the fire. It's like a real life adventure story. So I would encourage you guys to check it out. It's pretty amazing. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Soriselli.
I don't have anything to report.
All right, your turn, Gower.
Nothing to report.
All right, well, my only report is just to save the date for, it's actually next Friday, right? The Entrepreneurial Summit?
No, it's the 25th.
25th, just kidding, okay. That's 12 to 4, right?
That is 12 to 4 at TPC Colorado. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's it. All right. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Move to enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402.
What's up?
Tree committee.
If you'd like to, sure. I didn't know there's an update. Here we go. Please. Oh, welcome.
Hi.
I'm sorry, wasn't even paying attention.
Well, you all know me. I want to introduce our secretary of our tree committee, Ms. Tony Baker. And we have good news and bad news.
Yeah, good news, bad news. So with our last meeting, we had a pretty important meeting, we thought, trying to talk about putting out a newsletter or doing homeowner education for their responsibility for the tree lawns and kind of all of that. We did not have our liaison there.
I know, I'm sorry. That came out right.
Well, I totally understand that, absolutely respect you, but we do need a liaison that can be there. So we are respectfully asking for another liaison.
Does anyone fill in on the, what was that, second Friday or second Monday?
Third Monday,
So-
usually.
So the new board is going to appoint liaisons on April 26th, I would assume.
Okay. We
So,
have 2 meetings till then.
You know what, I'll make it happen.
Are you sure?
we'll find
You can- you
The
can
tree
always
committee can
contact
opt out.
so Will, if you can't make it,
Just call one of
call
us.
somebody and.
Yeah. That would be appreciated, because
Yeah.
we
Good.
really needed to know what we're allowed to do, what we can do, because we want to get this information out. We have multiple really great suggestions of how to get information out. We had someone offer to hold classes, and we need to know what we can and can't do.
Sure.
So.
Well, thank you for staying the whole time, yeah. Just for that, that's great. It makes a lot of sense though, so thank you for bringing that up. I do feel bad when I have to, like, oh. I know you guys-
We completely understand. We actually really respect you, and we understand that you have to make a living. Everybody does, and it's a really unfortunate time for you to have to try and meet
No,
it.
it's
So
fine. I really appreciate that committee and it being full, so thank you for
yeah,
staying
we've
all the
actually
time bringing that
had
up.
full members all for the last 3 meetings.
Because I'm not there.
Well, except for the mayor.
Yeah. I mean, like the actual
Yeah, I
committee
get it.
members. So.
I just, on the things that good ideas you have, I've always gone by the motto, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Well, we need money.
Oh.
There you go.
Okay.
we
Is
wanna-
this something like a report that you get, anything you need
Like the
immediately? or-
newsletter that we would need printing, because obviously I'm not going to print out 7,000.
Oh, no.
So we need to know what we can do, what is acceptable. We want to do either, we were thinking twice a year. We want to put it in multiple places. There was a bunch of different good ideas.
So this would be separate from the utility newsletter?
Okay. Yeah, because not everybody gets that because,
I don't.
for example, one of our members, he is auto pay and
Or goes to your
paperless,
landlord.
so he doesn't get a bill every month. So he doesn't get that newsletter. And there are several other reasons. Also, it's to inform people just more in depth about their responsibility for the trees, how to take care of them, how to,
Just chuckled, 7,000 newsletters and trees.
different programs. So no, just twice a year, spring and fall.
Okay.
So you have a member who is willing to give free instructions as well.
And she's part of the CSU extension.
Cool.
Okay.
So she's awesome.
That's awesome.
So,
Thank you. Well, thank you. See if we can get numbers.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And if I'm not there, I'll see if I can find someone to be there.
Okay.
Should be there anyway. All right. Is there a motion to go to an executive session?
Yes. Move to enter into executive session. Okay. Pursuant to counter CRS 24-6-4024EI to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing a strategy for negotiations and instructing negotiators, following details provided, potential property acquisition for trail easements.
Second.
All right. Good.
Motion and seconded. Final discussion.
Clerk, may I roll call vote, please?
Trustee Grace?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Heinen?
Here, yes. Still here. Still here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dowd?
Yes.
Trustee Sorsai?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.